Chapter 1643. Are these roasted pig's eyes? Adolphus looked at the plate in front of him seriously. There were 2 skewers of roasted meat that gave off a tantalizing aroma. They were indeed pig's eyes that had been dug out from the roots. However, after roasting them, they didn't look as scary as he had imagined. Under the oily brown and slightly charred skin, the eyeballs could still be seen. There were only 5 pig's eyes on each skewer, and they were strung together with bamboo sticks. Although the aroma was tantalizing, the roasted pig's eyes looked ordinary. There was nothing special about it, but it could actually treat the eye disease that had been troubling him. Let me see what's so special about this roasted pig's eyes. Adolphus reached out and picked up a skewer of roasted pig's eyes, preparing to taste it himself. Don't rush. My predecessor's experience tells me that you can't rush when eating roasted pig's eyes. You have to wait for them to cool down a little. Before Jason could finish his reminder, Adolphus had already bitten open the first roasted pig's eye. PFFF. The sound of the eyeball exploding was accompanied by the boiling liquid that splattered everywhere. Luckily, Jason was prepared and raised the plate in his hand, barely blocking the liquid that was splattering towards him. However, Adolphus wasn't prepared at all, and he directly received the baptism of the boiling hot liquid. Hot. With his understanding of eyes, Adolphus easily bit open the pig's eye. However, he didn't expect such a boiling liquid to be hidden under such a simple and calm appearance. His taste buds almost lost their effect at that moment. The boiling sensation made him want to spit out everything in his mouth. However, the burden of being a semi-public idol made him hold himself back. The boiling sensation gradually dissipated. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with the pig's eye in his mouth, the wonderful taste of the liquid started to blossom. This taste. Adolphus' eyes gradually brightened. It was a taste that was even more rich and delicious than the bone broth. As the heat dissipated, it started to heal his mouth that had been scalded by the boiling broth. What a wonderful taste. He didn't expect such gentleness to be hidden under the boiling sensation. There wasn't much liquid left. After he greedily sucked it out, he started to try chewing the rest of the eyeball. As an ophthalmologist with 30 years of clinical experience, this was indeed his first time eating pig's eyes. Or rather, it was his first time eating an eye that was bigger than a fish's eye. He had observed and dissected pig's eyes before because pig's eyes were very similar to human eyes, and they were easier to obtain. However, it was his first time chewing and tasting pig's eyes seriously like this. The tough outer membrane was used to protect the eyeball. It was very chewy, and there was a part of the eyeball that was as brittle as a bone. It should be the translucent part of the eyeball. When he tasted it carefully, it was as if he was dissecting the pig's eye again. He felt that this pig's eye should be slightly different from the pig's eyes from the domestic pigs that he had dissected before. The structure was generally similar, but the contents inside should be different. There seemed to be more transparent material, and it was fuller. After a while, the first roasted pig's eye was swallowed. The wonderful taste was still lingering in his mouth. At this moment, he had completely retracted his previous arbitrary judgment. Such a delicious and special roasted pig's eye, even if it did not have any other effects, just its mesmerizing taste alone was worth far more than 200 copper coins. How is it? Do you feel anything? Jason asked softly. Adolphus thought seriously for a while, and said, "It smells really good." Jason was speechless. After eating this roasted pig's eye, there will be a hint of coolness around the eyes, but it is not obvious. If you don't pay attention to it, you will probably miss it. Maybe it's working on the eyes, Adolphus said with a smile. Right. We still have to give Mr. Mac credit for this, Jason said with a smile. Adolphus nodded in agreement, and said, if this roasted pig's eye can treat some difficult eye diseases, it will indeed be a great thing for the patients. This boss is indeed a genius. He can make such delicious roasted pig's eyes, and it can even treat illnesses. Jason placed a glass of rum in front of Adolphus with a smile, and said, "Come, let the roasted pig's eyes cool first. Try this 15-year-old rum. It's much better than the 3-year-old rum that I bought years ago. Your Youngju fried rice." Yabemia placed a plate of fried rice in front of Darren. "What a beautiful fried rice." Darren moved closer, and his eyes lit up when he saw the fried rice with ingredients of various colors mixed together on the plate. His sister was right. It was as beautiful as a rainbow. Wow, this fried rice looks really good. Dorothy's eyes lit up as well. The extremely good looks attracted her attention immediately. The fragrance of the eggs and various ingredients also made her swallow her saliva uncontrollably. Big sister Dorothy, this is super delicious. Darren looked up at Dorothy, picked up a spoon, and passed it to her. He smiled and said, "You can have the first bite." "It's okay. I ordered a lot of food. This is for you and Lucy. You two can eat." Dorothy waved her hand with a smile and said, "After seeing your fried rice, I'm looking forward to the next dish even more. Seems like this is indeed a very good restaurant." "Big sister, you eat." Darren turned the spoon to Lucy. "Darren, you eat. I'll eat after you eat." Lucy shook her head. She took the spoon, scooped a spoonful of fried rice, and was about to feed it to Darren when she saw his eyes that had become much clearer. She stuffed the spoon back into his hand with a smile, and said, "It's your turn to eat now." Millimeter HM. Darren took the spoon, but quickly put it back on the plate. He smiled shyly, and said, "I'll wait for everyone to eat together." After the busy dinner service ended, the customers walked out of the restaurant with their slightly bloated bellies with satisfied smiles on their faces. Elizabeth quickly finished cleaning the restaurant, and the restaurant that had been open for a day looked brand new. "Everyone, go back and rest early. You still have work tomorrow." Meg took off his apron and smiled at everyone. However, no one had the intention to leave. "Boss, we've all heard from MIA that if Shirley is trapped in the wind forest, we want to rescue her together, just like the operation at the Fork tribe previously." "I believe we can definitely do it," Barbara said to Meg seriously. "Yes. It's too unsafe there. We can't leave her there alone." MIA nodded. "If necessary, I can ask the elders in the tribe for help." Gina raised her hand. "I'm not sure if my uncle, who has just become a new ancestor, can control his power. However, if I threaten him with my life, I don't think he will refuse to come," Camilla said lazily as she leaned against the counter. "I can fight 10 of them." Irina walked down from upstairs. "Me too," Amy agreed with Ugly Duckling in her arms. Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1644. Meg looked at everyone and fell silent for a while before nodding. "Actually, I received a letter today, and I've obtained Shirley's latest exact location. If we want to take action, we have to go deep into the Elven territory. It's extremely dangerous." "Then, big sister Shirley must be in great danger now, right?" Anna asked Meg with concern. The others were also looking at Meg nervously. This was the first time they had heard of Shirley's exact location. "She's slightly injured, but her condition is stable now. She's not in danger for now." Meg shook his head slightly. "However, the wind forest is under full lockdown now. She won't be able to escape on her own. If that's the case, it's easier to make mistakes if there are too many people. I'll go back and bring her back." Irina looked at Meg. "No one is more familiar with the wind forest than I am. Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble your highness to make the trip." Meg nodded slightly. "She's my most capable vanguard. I naturally won't leave her there alone," Irina said matter-of-factly. Meg turned to everyone and said, "I know everyone is concerned about Shirley, but the wind forest is more than 10 times more dangerous than the Fork tribe. Our goal is to bring Shirley back safely, so we'll leave this to Princess Irina." Everyone nodded slightly upon hearing that. Irina was far more powerful than everyone present. If only a small number of people were allowed to take action, she was undoubtedly the most suitable person. "But, Your Highness, if you go back to the forest, Helena will definitely make you stay at all costs," Pyrrhus said worriedly. The scene of being surrounded in the goblin's underground cave was still vivid in her mind. It was too dangerous to return to the wind forest. "The person who can make me stay is not born yet. As long as I want to leave, no one can make me stay." Irina patted Pyrrhus' head with a smile. "Bean Sprout, stay at home and wait for me to come back. I'll take my leave first." Irina glanced at Meg, then a faint golden light flashed beneath her feet, and she disappeared from the restaurant. "Everyone, Let's go back first. You might be able to see Shirley when you come tomorrow, Meg said with a smile. Only then did everyone bid their farewells and leave. After everyone left, Amy looked at Meg, who was closing the door, and asked doubtfully, "But father, I don't think you told big sister Irina the address just now, right?" "Aya, I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it." Meg smacked his head, looked at Amy and Anna, and said, "Looks like only Amy and Anna can sleep first tonight. I'm going to tell Irina the address and get her to bring Shirley back." "Uncle Meg, you can really bring sister Shirley back, right?" Anna looked at Meg with tears in her eyes. "Yes, we will definitely bring her back because she's a member of our restaurant. She'll always be a member." Meg went forward and placed his hand on Anna's head gently with a smile. "Take Anna to sleep first, okay? You'll be able to see her when you wake up tomorrow morning." Millimeter. Anna nodded vigorously. "Let's go, big sister Anna. Let's go to sleep first. Father and big sister Irina will definitely be able to bring sister Shirley back." Amy reached out to grab Anna's hand and led her upstairs. Meow Tilda Ugly Duckling wagged its tail and followed behind the two of them. "I'm leaving now." Meg turned to leave and closed the door slowly. "Father, you must come back safely." Amy's voice sounded from behind the door. "We will." Meg's lips curled up, and he disappeared from the restaurant's door. 5 minutes later, on the peak of a stone mountain outside the city, Irina was already sitting on the griffin's back. She turned her head to look at Meg, who was sitting behind her. "Is it news from the Grey Temple?" "No, the Grey Temple hasn't received any concrete news about Shirley yet." Meg shook his head. "You lied to them." Irina frowned. "No." Meg shook his head with a smile. "An old friend wrote me a letter and told me Shirley's exact location." "An old friend? A woman?" Irina's eyes narrowed slightly. "See for yourself." Meg felt an unusual murderous aura. He obediently took out a letter from his pocket and handed it to Irina. At the same time, he said, "Let's go, RZ. Let's explore the wind forest at night." Howl Tilda RZ let out a joyful cry. With a flap of its wings, it disappeared into the sky like a sharp arrow. Cough, cough. In a dimly lit room, a muffled cough sounded. The dim candlelight fell on the pale face on the bed. It still couldn't hide his handsomeness, but the pair of almond-shaped eyes that were usually lively couldn't hide the tiredness. He covered his mouth with a handkerchief and coughed twice to restrain himself. His good-looking eyebrows were twisted in pain. After a while, he removed his hand from his mouth. The white handkerchief was stained with blood. He put his hand on the edge of the bed to prevent the handkerchief from staining the white blanket. Creak. The sound of the door opening sounded. His body tensed up immediately. His right hand was already holding the sword hidden under the pillow. However, the door was quickly closed, followed by the sound of light footsteps. He relaxed his expression and let go of the sword. "I came back a little late today. I didn't find anything suitable for you to eat. There are only 2 fruits." Sally, who was wearing a rather luxurious long dress, came forward. She took out 2 red wild fruits and placed them on the wooden table beside the bed. Then, she took out a small flask. "This is a small flask of holy water of life. It will be of some help to your injuries." Blower supported himself on the bed and sat up slowly. He looked at Sally seriously, and said, "Thank you. It's all right. This is what I should do." A smile appeared on Sally's tired face. She passed the fruits to Blower and helped him open the flask before sitting down on the wooden chair at the side. The two of them were silent. Only the soft sound of Blower chewing the wild fruits could be heard in the room. The 2 fruits were finished in a short while. After drinking the holy water of life, Blower's pale face regained some color. Sally helped him keep the flask, and softly said, "I wrote a letter to Mr. Meg." Blower's expression froze. He shook his head slightly, and said, "I shouldn't have told them. The search for you has intensified in the past few days. Helena gave a death order to find you at all costs. She also offered a very high reward. With our strength, we won't be able to let you leave the wind forest safely." Sally was a little dejected. "Helena wants me to go to the Tree of Life. I'm afraid I can't help you too much." Chapter 1645. Helena stood on a high platform in the starry cave abode. Below the platform stood a dozen elves with their heads lowered. "I'll give you 3 days. Find Vincent's son even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground," Helena said coldly. "Yes," the elves replied fearfully. They quickly left after getting permission to leave. "Vincent really has a good son. He's stirring up trouble in the elven race." "Exactly. I thought it would be over after Irina took away those lowly slaves. I didn't expect him to kill so many lords alone. Hurry up and find her. Find her while she's injured. If she recovers, we don't know who will be the next victim." The elves chatted for a while before dispersing. "Don't worry, Great Elder. The wind forest has been completely sealed off. She definitely won't be able to escape." Elliot stood below the platform and looked at Helena with a flattering smile. Borge was dead. Although Sally's conferring ceremony was ruined, she still successfully became the new princess of the elven race. As a result, Elliot's status had soared, and he was now Helena's #1 favorite. He looked like he was second only to her and above everyone else. "If he doesn't die, I'm afraid you won't be able to live in peace for the rest of your life. You contributed a lot to Vincent's death." Helena's gaze landed on Elliot. Elliot's expression froze. However, he quickly smiled and said, "Vincent betrayed the elven race and tried to attack you. He deserves to die. His son is worse than him. He definitely won't live for long. Since he can't escape, we have to prevent others from coming to save him. With Irina's personality, she will definitely come to save him as long as she knows about him." Helena retracted her gaze. "News of him definitely won't get out. Besides, we've already made full preparations. As long as Irina dares to come, she definitely won't be able to leave," Elliot said confidently. "The letter was written to you by Sally?" Irina threw away the letter that had already been burned to ashes. She was a little surprised. "I should have told you that she worked as a waitress in the restaurant for a period of time." Meg nodded. She was engaged to Blower. However, Elliot was one of the attackers when Vincent was attacked and killed. Irina's brows furrowed slightly. So, she still chose to save Blower and protect him. "She's a good girl, that's for sure." Meg nodded. "How did you know?" "Ahem. The first thing a restaurant looks at when choosing employees is character. That was why I hired her." Meg cleared his throat to hide his awkwardness, and continued, "So, we only have to follow the map that she provided, go around those places that are heavily guarded, and pick up Blower at her residence. After that, we can evacuate immediately. It sounds very simple. It's not challenging at all." Irina pursed her lips disinterestedly. "Since Sally helped Blower, we have to make sure that this matter doesn't affect her. Compared to other people, I think it might be a good result if she manages the elven race in the end," Meg said with a smile. "Then, we have to kill her father first," Irina said with a serious expression. "Although I don't like to be the queen, there are many people who covet this position. Elliot is even more arrogant. He can't wait to learn from Borge. Although you're right, it sounds a little strange." Meg sighed. He had to face this problem sooner or later. He didn't know what kind of situation it would be when the time came. RZ's speed was extremely fast. Under its full speed, it arrived at the border of the wind forest in less than 2 hours. "RZ, retract your aura and fly higher," Meg ordered. The purple-striped griffin immediately flew higher. It pierced through the clouds and continued to fly toward the inner part of the wind forest. After Sally became the new princess of the elven race, she moved out of the Brewster family's territory and moved into the princess's palace that was specially prepared for her. According to the elven tradition, the new princess will move into the cave where the Tree of Life is to cultivate a relationship with the Tree of Life and gain its approval. "It seems like the little tree still doesn't want anyone to move in after I left," Irina said with a smile. "Has the Tree of Life become a spirit?" Meg asked curiously. "I'm not sure about that, either. However, it has spirituality, and can sense many things. It also has preferences. In the elven race, it has the best relationship with me apart from my mother. Then it has really become a spirit." Meg's lips twitched. He was just about to open his mouth to speak. However, tree people weren't a particularly rare species in this world. The Tree of Life was regarded as the holy tree of the elven race. After thousands of years of worship, it would be strange if it didn't become a spirit. "We're here," Irina reminded as she looked down. "RZ, go down." Meg patted RZ lightly. The purple-striped griffin turned its body around and began to dive down silently. The scenery below gradually became clearer. The princess's palace was built in the center of many buildings. It was adjacent to the queen's palace and was the core of the entire elven race. It was already late at night, but there were still bonfires lit everywhere. There were also elves patrolling the area. The security was tight. The purple-striped griffin made use of the dark night to land quietly in a dense forest. "I've already confirmed their location. Wait for me here," Irina said to Mag before she turned into a shadow and disappeared in the direction of the princess's palace. "It's okay. It's good to be a private chauffeur." Meg reached out to pat RZ's head. RZ was trying to comfort him. What if his wife was too strong? He didn't want to be a burden. Tap, tap. There was a knock on the door. Blower instinctively grabbed the sword under his pillow. A hint of panic appeared on Sally's face, but she quickly suppressed it. She stood up and said, "I'm already resting. If there's anything, we can talk about it tomorrow. I'm Irina." A voice sounded from outside the door. "Your Highness." Both Blower and Sally's expressions changed at the same time. Sally turned to look at Blower. "It's her." Blower nodded. He was completely sure that this was Irina's voice. Apart from worry, he was also touched. Sally quickly walked to the door and opened it. "Hello, Sally." Irina stood at the door and smiled at Sally. Sally looked at Irina, who was wearing a white dress. She was just like the beautiful, proud, and powerful princess back then. She bowed slightly and said, "Hello, Your Highness." Chapter 1646. Your Highness. Blower struggled to get up from his bed. He turned to Irina with surprise and concern in his eyes. "Why are you here?" "I came to pick you up." Irina walked into the room, and her brows furrowed at the sight of Blower's pale face. A small brocade box appeared in her hand, and she opened it to reveal a golden pill. She handed it to Blower, and said, "Eat this. This is a life pill." Blower looked at the golden pill in the brocade box in shock. He opened the lid, and rich life force energy wafted toward him. It was far more abundant than the water of life. He hurriedly shook his head, and said, "This is too precious. You shouldn't waste it on me. It's just a pill, what's so precious about it?" Irina pinched Blower's mouth, and stuffed the pill into his mouth before feeding him a mouthful of water of life. "Your injuries are too severe, and there are too many guards outside. Helena will be able to detect my presence if I attack you. If you want to leave, you have to at least be able to walk on your own." Blower didn't say anything else upon hearing that. He sat down on the bed with his legs crossed, and began to draw upon the rich life force energy to heal his body. His body had been severely wounded by a 10th-tier great magic caster's attack, but it was quickly healing under the nourishment of this powerful life force energy. He was very touched that the princess would use something as precious as the life pill to heal his injuries. One had to realize that the queen had expended a large amount of milk of life to refine these pills. There were only 9 of them in total, and all of them were holy healing pills that could enhance one's cultivation. Sally closed the door and returned to her room. She looked at Irina, and her lips moved, but she chose to remain silent in the end. "You don't have to feel sorry for me. This isn't something that you can change." Irina looked at Sally with a smile, and said, "I've been eating at Amy's a lot recently, and Amy and the others often mention you. If you have the chance in the future, you can go back and visit them." Millimeter. Sally's nasal voice became a little heavier as she looked at Irina with a smile. "So everyone still hasn't forgotten about her." Tears welled up in Sally's eyes as memories of her time at Amy's flashed through her mind. A simple life, loving family, and delicious food. That was probably the happiest period of her life. However, she was now shouldering too many things, and she was afraid that there would be even more in the future. Even if she wanted to abandon everything and leave, she could no longer do so. But why did you save him? Irina looked into Sally's eyes and asked. No matter how she looked at it, she shouldn't have done it. Maybe, we're all doing the same thing. Sally also looked at Irina, and her clear eyes lit up. Irina's eyes also lit up. She nodded and said, then we will definitely succeed. About 3 minutes later, Blauer opened his eyes, got out of bed, and put on his shoes. Thank you. Blauer extended a deep bow toward Sally. You're welcome. Sally nodded. Let's go. Irina turned and walked toward the door. Do you have a message for them? Blauer asked Sally. Sally was silent for a moment before shaking her head. Take care. Blauer turned and left with Irina. Sally stood at the door for a while before closing it with a forlorn expression. From that day forth, she would be the only one left in this forest. You're so good at switching between men's and women's clothes. Irina teased Blauer as they easily evaded the guards outside the princess's palace. It's just a hobby. Blauer replied in a slightly awkward manner. He stole a glance at Irina, worried that the princess would think that he was a pervert. Irina looked back at Blauer with a serious expression, and said, I still like you in women's clothes. Blauer raised an eyebrow. He pondered for a moment before nodding. I'll change back when I get back. Anna, that lass, seems to like you a lot. She doesn't look too happy when she doesn't see you back, Irina said casually as she continued walking. Anna. Blauer clenched his fists tightly, and a hint of guilt welled up in his heart. He had thought that she would be happy to be with Amy and the others, but now, it seemed that she was going to be very happy. I'm very sorry about what happened to your father. I should be the one to avenge him, but you have to risk your life here. Irina stopped by the wall and turned to look at Blauer with an apologetic expression. Blauer shook his head. Father died in battle for the elven race. You don't have to blame yourself or apologize. However, as his son, I should bear this grudge. Then let's get some interest back today. Irina reached out and pulled off the blood-stained bandage around Blauer's waist. Then, she used her fingers as a knife to cut it into 5 pieces. She wrote 2 lines of words on each piece. Thank you for your help. I'll repay you 100-fold in the future. I'll repay you for your kindness today. Blauer looked at the different words on each piece of cloth and looked at Irina in confusion. When we leave later, I'll throw them into the territories of Morris, Gibson, and those few families. Hasn't Helena been very strict recently? Even if they don't die, they'll be skinned alive first. Irina smiled. After seeing the patrolling elves leave, she brought Blauer into the dense forest at the side. In the distance, Blauer had already noticed the huge beast in the forest, as well as the man sitting on its back. That was the man who won the favor of the princess. That was the man who won the admiration of the entire world. That was the man who had once saved the night elves and accompanied the princess to release all the elven slaves. He had to admit that only such a man was worthy of the best princess. Let's go. Irina appeared beside Meg in a flash. Blauer stood in front of the purple-striped griffin and bowed slightly to Meg to express his gratitude. Meg sized Blauer up. It seemed like his injuries were better than he had imagined since he was able to walk here on his own. Irina must have already treated him. Come on up, Meg said in a low voice. Blauer didn't hesitate. He tapped lightly on the tree at the side and landed lightly on the griffin's back. Let's go back. Meg patted RZ's back gently. RZ flapped its wings and rose silently into the sky again, piercing through the darkness like an arrow. When the purple-striped griffin rose to a sufficient height, Irina let go of the cloth strips, and the 5 strips of cloth fell in 5 different directions. Let's see who's the lucky one who can pick up these treasures, Irina said with a smile. No pop-up window. Chapter 1647. Amy, do you think Uncle Meg and Big Sister Irina will be able to bring Big Sister Shirley back? Anna asked worriedly as she sat on the bed and looked at the stars outside the window. Trust me. They'll definitely be able to. Amy replied as she sat beside Anna drowsily with Ugly Duckling's head resting on her pillow. Meow Tilda Ugly Duckling also opened its eyes and answered drowsily. But why are they still not back after so long? Anna asked worriedly. Roast duck. Roast duck leg smells so good. Hee hee. Amy bit Ugly Duckling's head with a mysterious smile. Meanwhile, the drowsy Ugly Duckling's eyes widened as it slowly turned to look at Amy with fear. Anna turned to look at Amy. She got up and laid her down with resignation. Then, she covered her with a small blanket and lowered the brightness of the lights in the room. She sat by the window and continued to wait in a daze with her chin in her hands. After an unknown period of time, Anna. Blower pushed open the door, and his eyes reddened at the sight of Anna sleeping by the window. Anna seemed to have been woken up by the sound of the door opening. She raised her head and looked in the direction of the door. Big Brother Blower. Anna's eyes lit up immediately. She almost jumped out of her chair and threw herself into Blower's arms as she sobbed, "You're finally back. I thought you didn't want Anna anymore. Anna, I'm back. I'm sorry to have made you worry," Blower said apologetically as he hugged Anna. "Am I dreaming? Big Brother Blower, are you really back?" Anna's tears fell as she looked up at Blower in disbelief. "No, I'm back. I'm really back." Blower reached out to wipe away her tears as he shook his head with a pained expression. He didn't dare to imagine how Anna had spent this period of time. His heart and mind had been consumed by hatred, and he had almost forgotten that she was still waiting for him. Millimeter HM. Anna nodded. She reached out to touch the scab at the corner of Blower's eyebrow, and begged with a pained expression, "Can you not leave Anna again? Don't leave Anna alone again." "All right, I won't do it again," Blower promised solemnly. "It's good that you're back. We don't have to worry anymore." Meg stood outside the door and looked at the two of them with a smile. His gaze went past the two of them and landed on Amy, who was still sleeping soundly. The little girl was really not affected at all. "Boss." Blower picked up Anna and turned to Meg with a grateful expression as he said, "Thank you for taking care of Anna for me during this time. Anna has been a great help in the shop recently. She's also very happy with Amy." Meg shook his head with a smile, and said, "Stay here tonight. I'm afraid it's not convenient for you to go to the Elven Embassy. There's no need for that. My people have already established themselves in Chaos City. I can go and find them." Blower shook his head. After a brief moment of contemplation, he said, "I need 3 days to recuperate. After that, I'll continue to work at the restaurant." 5 days. Come back to work after you've recovered. Meg didn't stop him. He helped Anna pack her luggage, and sent them out of the restaurant. "Do you think he's Shirley or Blower?" Irina appeared next to Mag, and asked as she watched the big and small figures walking away at the end of the long street. "His Blower, and his also Shirley." Meg smiled, and said, "Perhaps there's no conflict at all. He enjoys 2 identities, and is also immersed in them." Irina pondered for a moment with furrowed brows, and then nodded thoughtfully. Meg closed the door, and casually asked, "Did Sally say anything?" "She's going to become the best elven princess after me," Irina said calmly. "Very high praise." Meg looked at Irina with a surprised expression. After all, the height that she could reach was beyond the reach of most elves. "However, you seem to be very interested in her." Irina turned to look at Meg. "As a boss, it's normal to be concerned about an employee," Meg said seriously. "She's the elven princess now, not your employee. That's not important. What's important is that she used to be one." "That's enough," Meg said calmly. "I'm a nostalgic person. I heard that before you met me, you met a desert flower at the border." "Ahem, I don't think so. I seem to have forgotten some things after I got injured. I don't have any recollection of the desert." Meg was a little flustered. He really didn't want to take the blame. What desert flower? He didn't know anything about it. Shouldn't Medusa be the one staying in the desert? "Hehe, you'll sleep in the study tonight." Irina turned and went upstairs with a smile. Meg shrugged, and went upstairs with a resigned expression. After bringing Blower back, he felt as if a rock had been lifted from his heart. Sally was still the cold and kind girl in his memory. It was a pity that he couldn't reveal his identity during this mission. Otherwise, he would have brought her some specialties from the restaurant. "My lord, someone found this blood-stained cloth in the territory of the Morris family. The blood fiend confirmed that the bloodstains on it belonged to Blower. An elf quickly walked into the hall with a piece of cloth, and presented it to Elliot with both hands. The Morris family is stationed at the border. Could it be that Blower has already left the Wind Forest through their territory? Elliot said angrily as he looked at the words of gratitude on the cloth. Even though the name wasn't written, the blood fiend had already confirmed the identity of the person who wrote it. Send people to surround the Morris family and bring Morris to the Starry Cave abode. The Great Elder will make the decision. Elliot quickly walked out with the cloth in his hand. He didn't expect the Morris family to do such a thing even though they were at loggerheads. Look, what's that hanging on the tree? Outside the Gibson family's territory, a team of elves holding torches stopped in their tracks. The leader of the elves took down the cloth hanging on the tree, and his eyes lit up when he saw the words on it. Quick, let's go to the Brewster family's territory. We're going to be rich. Young master, you're finally back. Ingwe stood in front of the courtyard gate and looked at Blower, who was holding Anna's hand, with tears glistening in his wrinkled eyes. I couldn't kill all my enemies and avenge my father. Blower lowered his eyes. Since the chief chose to die, he didn't want you to avenge him, Ingwe said in a low voice. How can I bear to avenge my father's death? Blower pouted. Is this the purpose of the Night Elves? Blower looked up at Ingwe. His lips trembled, but he still shook his head in the end. Come in. It's good that you're back. Ingwe took the luggage from him and turned to enter the courtyard. Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1648. The stars are so beautiful. But which one is Grandpa? Grandpa said that he would become the little star on the right of the brightest star after he died. Look, it's over there. That little, but very bright little star. In the small courtyard, Lucy, who was wrapped in a cotton-padded coat, pointed to the sky and smiled. I see it. Darren's eyes lit up, and his little face was filled with excitement. Lucy turned to look at Darren with a smile, and firmly said, Darren, you will become an outstanding hunter. Darren retracted his gaze, and hesitantly said to Lucy, but Grandpa Christopher said that we can go to school and become knowledgeable people. Don't you want to go back? Lucy frowned. Darren opened his mouth, and then slowly lowered his eyes. He softly said, I will go back with Big Sister. I want to go back and return the money to the villagers. These are all their little savings. Lucy's expression softened. She patted Darren's head, and said, the villagers have helped us a lot all these years. We can't be ungrateful. Millimeter HM. Darren raised his head again, and nodded at Lucy. I know. Grandpa said that we can't be ungrateful. It's right that you want to become knowledgeable like Big Sister Dorothy. If Grandpa was still alive, he would definitely support you. Lucy looked at Darren with a serious expression, and said, but we can't just enjoy what others have given us for granted. Grandpa Christopher has already helped us treat your eyes. We should be grateful and repay him, and not continue to enjoy what he has given us. Big Sister, I know I was wrong. Darren lowered his head. We have to make a trip back to the village tomorrow to return everyone's money. After that, we will come back to Chaos City. Lucy grabbed Darren's hand, and smilingly said, Big Sister will work to support you. Darren raised his head immediately, and looked at Lucy in surprise. We are still coming back to Chaos City. Millimeter HM. I am going to send you to Chaos School so that you can become a knowledgeable person. Then, you won't have to go hunting in the dangerous forest anymore. Lucy nodded. But Darren looked at his frail sister, his heart aching and a little worried. I will go and look for Grandpa Christopher tomorrow morning to bid him farewell. As for work, we will talk about it when we come to Chaos City again, Lucy said with a smile. She looked up at the sky again before pulling Darren to sleep. This Chaos City is really far away. I thought I'd be able to get there in 10 days. Who would have thought that it would take me over a month to get there? A caravan stopped outside Chaos City, and the curtains of a horse-drawn carriage were lifted. An elderly dwarf with a head of white hair lifted the curtains, and looked at the dark city walls with a smile. Yes. I didn't expect Isen Castle to be so far away from Chaos City. However, Master, You have so many luggage and tools. Even the biggest flying steed wouldn't be able to carry them all, Joss said with a smile as he looked out from the other side. Joey had already taken out his coat, and respectfully said to Rome, "Master, Chaos City doesn't open its gates at night. You've been in the horse-drawn carriage for a day. Do you need to get off and move around?" "No need. I'll just stay in the carriage and sleep. We can enter the city tomorrow." Rome shook his head with a smile. He looked in the direction of the city walls, and expectantly said, "I wonder if I can eat Meg's steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers tomorrow morning." "Master, is that steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers really that delicious?" Joss asked curiously. The news of Master Rome leaving Isen Castle caused quite a stir. Even the castle lord came to ask him to stay. However, no one knew that the master didn't leave because of the generous conditions that Chaos City offered him. Instead, it was because a chef from Chaos City made a steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers for him. Not only did he get the master, who hadn't made a dish for many years, to give him a cleaver that he made himself, he even moved his workshop all the way to Chaos City. The tightly shut city gates suddenly opened outwards slowly, and 2 teams of cavalrymen with torches escorted a person towards their carriage. "This is Master Rome's carriage, right?" The person in the lead asked loudly as he urged his horse forward. "That's me." Rome stood up, and let Joey put his coat on him. He then lifted the curtain and walked out. "Master Rome, I've heard a lot about you." That person urged his horse forward, and cupped his fists at Rome. "I am Dicus from the City Lord's Castle's Secretariat. I am here on the City Lord's orders to bring Master Rome into the city to rest." "Thank you for your kind intentions, City Lord." Rome was a little surprised, but he still cupped his fists. "Because Chaos City has a rule that carriages are not allowed to enter the city at night, we can only invite Master Rome's carriage into the city first. The carriages will enter the city tomorrow morning." Dicus smiled, and made an inviting gesture. "It's indeed a good thing to be able to have a good night's sleep." Rome smiled as he got into the carriage. The coachman quickly drove the carriage into the city. "Master Rome? Could it be that legendary blacksmith from Isen Castle? It can't be, right? I heard that he hasn't left Isen Castle for hundreds of years. How could he appear in Chaos City? Maybe the city lord invited him? That's why he specially sent someone out of the city to welcome him?" All the merchants were envious when they saw that. They were guessing who was sitting in that carriage that could make the city lord's castle come out of the city to welcome him. However, no one tried to break the rules. "Master Rome, this is your first time in Chaos City. I'll have to trouble you to stay at the city lord's castle for the night. Someone will bring you to find a suitable place to stay tomorrow morning." Dicus arranged accommodation for Rome and the others, and prepared to leave. "Thank you. But, young friend, I have something to ask you," Rome said. "Please go ahead. Have you heard of a restaurant called Immerse in Chaos City? The one whose boss is Meg. Would you like to have your meal now? Immerse has already closed for business. I'm afraid you won't be able to eat anything tonight. However, I can get the kitchen to prepare some food for you." Dicus looked at Rome with surprise. He didn't expect Immerse to be so famous that even Master Rome had heard of it. The city lord valued this legendary blacksmith who had forged so many amazing weapons. However, he was also a little puzzled as to why Master Rome, who had never left Isen Castle, would choose Chaos City and move his workshop here. However, no matter what, this was a good thing for Chaos City. The arrival of a legendary blacksmith could attract a sizable group of powerhouses. Even though they were here to obtain the weapons personally forged by the blacksmith, since they were living in Chaos City, they naturally became a part of Chaos City's power, and indirectly increased Chaos City's power. "It's all right. Since it's already closed for business, let's go tomorrow." Rome waved his hand with a smile, and said, "We've already had our dinner. There's no need for the trouble." No pop-up window. Chapter 1649. I heard Master Rome has come to Chaos City. The Isen Castle branch received a huge sum of money some time ago. It was deposited by Master Rome. I heard he left Isen Castle long ago, but I didn't expect him to come to Chaos City. Hill and Ian sat opposite each other for breakfast as they chatted. Interesting. I wonder if it's the City Lord's castle's doing that could make this old antique leave the castle that he had been holed up in for hundreds of years to spend his old age here, Ian said with a smile as he took a bite of the white egg. Didn't you have some dealings with him when you were young? He's not someone the City Lord's castle can move. Back then, the king of the Roth Empire offered something the City Lord's castle couldn't afford. Hill used a silk handkerchief to wipe his mouth. Ian stroked his chin with a puzzled expression, and said, "That's exactly what I'm curious about. What made him deposit all the money in the warehouse, and then come all the way to Chaos City? If I didn't remember wrongly, the latest weapon that he forged should be Boss Mag's cleaver," she said. Cleaver? Could he be here for Amy's? Ian said with surprise. However, he shook his head, and said, "I don't think so. He's not particular about food. Perhaps you can ask him this question yourself. He shouldn't have many acquaintances in Chaos City." Hill stood up and left. "That's a good suggestion. Although the deal back then didn't work out, at least I'm familiar with him." Ian ate the remaining half of the egg slowly before instructing, "Prepare the carriage. We're going to the City Lord's castle." "Master, where should we set up our new workshop?" Joey asked curiously as he helped Rome put on his coat. Joss was also looking at Master Rome expectantly. Although they were far away from Isen Castle, they were still blacksmiths as long as they had a workshop. "Let's think about this after we have our meal," Rome said nonchalantly as he walked out. "Do we need to meet up with the convoy?" Joey asked again. "I'll leave it to you. Someone from the mayor's palace will take you there. Once I've confirmed the location of the workshop, you can bring the equipment to the new place," Rome said to Joey. "Yes." Joey nodded and left quickly. "Master, the City Lord Mansion has prepared breakfast for us," Joss said. "No need. Let's go straight to Mammoth for breakfast." Rome shook her head and walked straight to the door. "Good morning, Master Rome. Are you heading to Amy's?" Dicus asked with a smile when he saw Rome walking out of the courtyard. "Yes." Rome nodded. "Then I'll take you there. I'm a regular at Amy's, and I haven't had breakfast yet," Dicus said with a smile. "Then I'll have to trouble you." Rome didn't refuse. Besides, it would be troublesome to ask someone for directions. However, it seemed that Mammoth was really famous. Even a random worker from the mayor's palace was a regular at the restaurant. The three of them walked out of the mayor's palace and were about to get into the carriage when a luxurious black carriage stopped in front of the mayor's palace. The coachman opened the door and Ian walked out. He looked at Rome and the others who were about to get into the carriage and smiled. "Master Rome, are you going out?" "You are." Rome looked back at Ian and thought for a while. His eyes lit up. "You're the scammer? How can you say that?" "I'm the owner of a money house." Ian's face darkened. He didn't expect Rome to think that he was a scammer. At his level, there was no need for him to make friends with any master blacksmiths. He didn't lack anything, and he didn't need a legendary weapon. That thing wasn't as attractive to him as a high-quality fishing rod. It was just that he was getting old, and there were fewer and fewer old friends. He had spent some time at Isen Castle when he opened up the market, and an old friend came to visit, so he wanted to meet him. "That's what everyone called you back then. I just didn't expect to put my money in your money house now." Rome smiled. The last time he saw Ian was over 40 years ago. He was still quite young back then. In order to make him deposit his money in his money house, he stood guard outside the forge almost every day. He was even more attentive than those who came to ask for weapons, and left a deep impression on him. Decades passed in the blink of an eye, and he had become the owner of the largest money house on the Norland continent. He had also become a little old man. "I didn't expect that I would have to wait for my granddaughter to complete this task." Ian shrugged. He couldn't help but smile when he thought of the past. He looked at Rome and said, "Master, where are you going? It's rare for us to meet. Why don't we have a cup of tea together?" Rome directly boarded the horse-drawn carriage and bluntly said, "There's no need for tea this early in the morning. I'm going to Mammoth for breakfast, and I have to book a place for the forge after that. I don't have time for tea." "Then we'll take our leave, Mr. Ian," Dicus said with a smile. He boarded the horse-drawn carriage and instructed the coachman to go to Immerse. He's in such a hurry to go to Immerse for breakfast this early in the morning. Don't tell me he's really here because of that Meg brat. Ian looked on with surprise as the horse-drawn carriage disappeared into the distance. He didn't expect his invitation to be rejected. He was still thinking of recommending a few good shops to Rome because of their old friendship. Let's go to Immerse and have a look. Ian waved his hand. Master, didn't you already have breakfast this morning? The butler standing behind him asked. I'm only 70% full. Let's go and see what kind of magic this Immerse has that could make this old fellow Rome move all the way here. Ian turned and boarded the horse-drawn carriage. Let's go to Immerse, the butler instructed the coachman before entering the carriage and closing the door. Is Master Rome an old acquaintance of Mr. Mac? Dicus asked Rome curiously in the horse-drawn carriage. We've met at Isen Castle. I've eaten his dishes, Rome answered. It's indeed very difficult to put down Mr. Mac's dishes after eating them. Yes. That steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers is the most delicious food I've ever eaten. Rome nodded with a smile. He couldn't help feeling a little excited at the thought of being able to eat it again soon. Dicus looked at Rome, and could vaguely guess the reason why Rome moved his workshop all the way to Chaos City. Mr. Mac was really a rare talent. He managed to attract such a great blacksmith to Chaos City with just a steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. The horse-drawn carriage stopped. Dicus lifted the curtain and took a look. He stood up and said, We've arrived at Immerse. Rome alighted too. When he saw the long line of people at the entrance of the restaurant, he couldn't help but ask in surprise, so many people? We're considered early. This line will stretch all the way to the square, Dicus said with a smile. No pop-up window. Chapter 1650. Seems like it's not easy to get a meal. Rome shook his head with a smile. However, he still followed Dicus to the back of the line. Although Meg said that he could look for him directly when he reached Chaos City, he didn't want to break the rules and make things difficult for Meg since everyone was lining up. Master Rome, what did you eat from Mr. Mac? Dicus asked curiously as he stood behind Rome. Steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, Rome replied without hesitation. If it's steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, I'm afraid we won't be able to eat it this morning, Dicus said regretfully. Why? Immerse only provides specific breakfasts during their opening hours. They don't provide food with strong flavors or food that takes a long time to prepare, including steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, Dicus explained. I see. Rome pondered after hearing that. He didn't expect to not be able to eat the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers that he had been craving for so early in the morning. What a pity. Mr. Mac is a stickler for the rules. Even I can't persuade him to make steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers for you. However, Immerse breakfast is equally amazing. Whether it's soy milk with youtiao, tofu pudding with yangju fried rice, or a bowl of congee with pork and century egg that warms your stomach, you will be satisfied for the entire morning, Dicus recommended with a smile. Although the names sound a little weird, they seem pretty good. Let's try the other dishes this morning. Rome nodded. Actually, he didn't feel like eating steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers early in the morning. He would come back for steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers and a bottle of wine after he was done with his business. That would be perfect. Joss stood behind the two of them. He looked at the beautiful restaurant in front of him, and then at the growing line behind him. He couldn't help but feel a little speechless. He didn't expect Mr. Meg's restaurant to be so famous that so many people were willing to line up for breakfast so early in the morning. Not long after, a black horse-drawn carriage stopped in front of Immerse. Master, we're here at Immerse. The steward lifted the curtain and took a look. He said hesitantly, however, there seems to be a lot of people waiting in line. If we wait in line, I don't know when we'll be able to wait. So many people. Won't we have to wait for God knows how long? Yen lifted the curtain to take a look and couldn't help but be speechless. He quickly lowered the curtain and said, Let's go back. It's better to go fishing than to wait in line here. Yes. The butler nodded and instructed the coachman to return home. No one noticed that such a carriage had paused for a moment and then left. Not long after, the door of the restaurant opened, and Meg walked out, smiling as he welcomed the guests. Mag's gaze followed the line habitually, and landed on Rom. He couldn't help but be surprised. However, he didn't lose his composure, and continued to greet the customers with a smile. "Master Rome, I didn't expect you to really come," Meg said with a smile as he looked at the Rome who had come with the team. "If I didn't come, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to eat that delicious steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers for the rest of my life." Rome looked at Meg with a smile, and said, "No one else in this world can make such delicious food. If it's steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, this morning I know. I'll come back for steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers at night. I'll just have something simple for breakfast. I still have to find a place to set up the forge later," Rome said with a smile. He didn't block the door, and walked straight in. "The city lord asked me to help Master Rome set up the forge," Dicus explained to Meg with a smile before following Rome into the restaurant. Joss bowed respectfully to Meg, and quickly followed behind. If it wasn't for this man, he wouldn't be the master's disciple anymore, and wouldn't be able to follow him to Chaos City to learn his superb forging skills. Meg smiled. Master Rome was a transparent person, and didn't want to trouble others at all. Master Rome ordered a bowl of kanji with pork and century egg, and finished it with satisfaction. He ordered another bowl, and walked into the kitchen before he left. He gave Meg a thumbs up, and praised, "Young friend, your culinary skills are indeed extraordinary. I'm afraid I'll be a regular at your restaurant in the future." "Of course I'll welcome Master Rome if you're willing to come," Meg said with a smile as he watched the group of people leave. "Could that be the legendary blacksmith, Master Rome? I heard from the caravan that entered the city today that Master Rome had indeed come to Chaos City, but I didn't expect him to come to Mammoth for breakfast so early in the morning." "Yes. Seems like he's quite close to Mr. Mac. Could it be that he moved the forge to Chaos City because of Mr. Mac? If it's me, it's really possible." The customers began to discuss softly as they watched Master Rome leave. As the most famous legendary blacksmith on the Norland continent, Master Rome, who had personally forged a series of famous swords such as the Tian-Du sword, would always be the center of attention. In the past few years, Master Rome had suddenly gone silent, and locked himself in his forge, refusing to see any customers. There was also a long period of time when he didn't produce any new products, and there were even rumors that he had stopped working. However, no one expected him to suddenly announce that he was leaving Isen Castle, and moving his forge to Chaos City. Furthermore, there were rumors that his latest product was actually a cleaver called Fat Head Fish. Of course, that was just a rumor. No one believed that Master Rome would forge a cleaver for others. That was a job that only roadside blacksmiths would take on. It didn't match Master Rome's status at all. Today, everyone could be sure of one thing. Master Rome had indeed come to Chaos City, and he seemed to be in a good state of mind. Perhaps they would hear about the news of another legendary weapon being born soon. After the morning operating hours, MIA and the rest went to the ice cream shop. Meg opened the door, and Harris, who was waiting outside, walked in with Chapman with a smile. He looked at Meg, and asked, "Master, are we learning Buddha jumps over the wall today?" "No." Meg rolled his eyes. "I've told you 100 times. Even if you learn it, you won't be able to find all the ingredients." "Master, you're belittling me. I'm not a famous chef, after all. Even if I don't have all the ingredients, I can still find substitutes," Harris said with a smile. "If it could be substituted so easily, then it wouldn't be Buddha jumps over the wall." Mag glanced at Harris' thick hair. At the same time that it lost its original flavor, it also lost its special effects. "If it can't prevent hair loss, I don't have to learn it." Harris fiddled with his hair, and proudly said, "Look at my hair. Duong. It's black and shiny. Oh, yes. Master Rome has come to Chaos City. Aren't you old acquaintances with him?" Meg asked casually as he fiddled with the grill at the side. No pop-up window. Chapter 1651. What did you say? Who's here? Harris was taken aback as he stared at Meg in disbelief. "Isen Castle's Master Rome," Meg said. "He had his breakfast in the restaurant this morning. How is that possible? That fellow is the kind of person who could stay in the workshop for his entire life." Harris' eyes widened in shock. "Maybe the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers is too delicious," Meg said calmly. "You mean, he was attracted by the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers you made? He actually gave up his insistence and belief as a homebody, and came all the way to Chaos City for a fish head?" Harris stared at Meg in disbelief. "Isn't the charm of a fish head enough?" Meg asked Harris. Harris thought about it seriously, and nodded. "It's enough. Wasn't he staying in Chaos City just because of a dish?" It sounded incredible, but it also made sense. "Let's learn how to roast beef kebabs today. The simplest kebabs." Meg took out a whole piece of beef and a bunch of bamboo skewers from the fridge, and placed them on the chopping table. "Let's start from cutting the meat and skewering the meat. Roasting meat is my specialty. I'll definitely be able to pick it up quickly," Harris said confidently. Chapman stood at the side and watched seriously like a good student. "Roasting meat is a technical job. You can only roast meat to your satisfaction if you control the heat well. The preparation of the ingredients is also very important. This piece of beef we chose." Meg began teaching seriously. Harris and Chapman were very good disciples. They had a solid foundation in culinary skills, and were very sincere and serious when it came to cooking. Therefore, apart from the husband and wife lung slice, Meg also planned to teach them how to roast beef kebabs. The supper world didn't have roast kebabs, so it was rather lonely and boring. Meg didn't have the ability to let more people eat roast kebabs at the moment, so Harris, who liked to travel and spar with others, was obviously a good propagator. Perhaps he could let roast kebabs gain a foothold in the supper world of the Norland continent through him. Money was endless, and it wasn't easy to add some novel dishes to a world's food and beverage structure and make them popular. He had never said that his dishes were not to be imitated in Chaos City, but none of the restaurants in the Aden Square that were imitating his dishes were still doing well after the novelty period. Therefore, a professional apprentice was also very important. "Master, don't worry. What we have learned will never be taught to a third person. We will only learn it for ourselves." Harris looked at Meg and promised solemnly. He was rather touched by Meg's straightforwardness and unconditional dedication. Even a father and son might not be willing to share a recipe with each other for something as private as a recipe, let alone two complete strangers. Yet, he was willing to share everything with them just because of a joking bet. He didn't hide anything from them at all. This kind of character and trust made him admire Meg from the bottom of his heart. He deserved to be called master. Meg shook his head and said, "You don't have to keep it a secret for me. I think the standard of the culinary world is too low now. I hope you can help me spread the word about these two dishes, and raise the standard of the culinary world a little." Harris was stunned. He looked at Meg, who was calm and didn't seem to be joking, and sighed. "This is the loneliness of a powerhouse. I once had this feeling too, but I didn't expect to meet Master one day. Don't worry. I will teach them everywhere I go in the future, and let these two dishes spread. You have to learn it first." Meg glanced at Harris with a smile, and said, "You still don't need me to give you some pointers this time?" "No. A qualified student wouldn't ask a teacher for pointers before trying it himself. Although it's foolproof, he would lose the chance to find out his shortcomings and improve himself." Harris rejected decisively. Chapman, who was at the side, hesitated for a while. He also looked at Meg and said, "Grandmaster, I also want to try it myself this time." "All right, then you guys go ahead. I'm going out for a while." Meg removed his apron, took a few kebabs that were already grilled, and walked out of the door. "Why don't you give me any pointers this time, too?" Harris asked Chapman with a smile. "Master is right. Shortcuts won't allow a chef to improve. Things that go straight into the brain and things that come out by thinking are different. This is what you taught me since I was young," Chapman said seriously. "All right, then let's start cutting the meat." Harris took out a knife and started cutting the meat seriously. "Where are you researching the blueprints?" Meg took the kebabs into the smithy next door. Morbai, Lulu, and Hannah were sitting around a small table and discussing the blueprints seriously. Yes, boss. Morbai's boss is really awesome. The first part is almost done. Hannah looked up. There were 3 streaks of charcoal ash on her face, making her look like a disfigured kitten. Mr. Mac. Morbai also looked at Meg and greeted him with a smile. I grilled some kebabs. Have some before you continue. Meg passed the kebabs in his hand over. There were 2 kebabs for each of them, and it was just right. Bo! Boss, let me show you the machine. Hannah chewed on the kebabs as she led Meg into the smithy next door. Hannah pointed at a row of rather large parts in the corner of the smithy, and said, Look, these parts are all done. Now we're only missing the main body of the brewing machine. Morbai's boss said that thing is too big, and this smithy isn't big enough. He has to find a few blacksmiths from his friend's place to do it together. The efficiency is not bad, and the precision is not bad. It's far better than your original batch of old machines. Meg squatted down to check those parts. He couldn't help but praise Morbai's craftsmanship. Although it was purely handmade, the precision of these parts was extremely high. It was more than enough to make wine. He was indeed a ruthless person who could make his own cannons. Hannah said with a serious face, I made it myself. Although it looks a little ugly, I still used it to make high-quality rum. That's a good machine. Good, good, good. I know you're great. Meg smiled. It seemed that the brewing factory could start construction at the same time. After it was built, the machine would enter the factory, and they could start mass-producing rum. He could already imagine what kind of investment it would be to own a top-notch rum factory and get a top-notch brand. You guys continue with your work. I'm going to bask in the sun. Meg didn't stay for long. He went out of the smithy and saw Julian combing charcoal's few remaining feathers at the entrance of the magic potion shop next door. He smiled and greeted, Master Julian, you're combing charcoal's feathers. Charcoal raised its neck in satisfaction, enjoying the feeling of the fine comb sliding across its body. Comb it neatly. Amy will burn more easily. Julian replied with a hoarse voice. Huh. Charcoal's body stiffened and fell in the cage. No pop-up window. Chapter 1652. System, I completed the rum mission before, didn't I get the opportunity to learn 2 kinds of wine? Meg returned to his restaurant and set up a recliner at the door to bask in the sun while asking in his heart. The reward has been issued for a long time, please receive it as soon as possible. The system replied. Meg looked at the various kinds of wine in his mind and asked curiously, whiskey is also known as the water of life. In this world, what is the relationship between this water of life and the water of life of the elves? The specific effect, please test it yourself after the host draws. The system leisurely said. Meg frowned and thought for a moment, then said, well, then I want a Scotch whiskey and a Marotai. Ding. The Scotch whiskey and Marotai recipes have been issued successfully. The system prompt sounded, and 2 glittering experience bags appeared in Meg's mind, with whiskey and Marotai written on them. One was the ancestor of whiskey, and the other was the model of China's Maotai-flavored liquor. Coupled with the existing beer in the restaurant and the rum that will be opened in the factory, Mammoth's drinks could be considered complete. It was a pity that the system did not open the right to sell the wine to him, otherwise, just the quality of the wine that crushed Romani Conti could easily be sold at a high price. Of course, whether the Maotai-flavored liquor that was popular on the tables of China's people would be liked in this world was still unknown. Interesting. I'll learn whiskey tonight and see if the water of life created by the British gentleman is worthy of this name. Meg's mouth slightly raised. He still had some expectations for the country that was full of bald men and warm-hearted gentlemen. With nothing to do, Meg directly ate the whiskey and Marotai experience bags and digested them with his eyes closed for half an hour. When he opened his eyes again, Meg felt that he was now a master brewer, the invincible kind. It seems that the scale of this winery can be expanded and directly mass-produce the 4 kinds of wine. Meg touched his chin and pondered. Dwarfs loved wine, demons loved wine, orcs loved wine, humans loved wine. Even the elves had a lot of good wine. The market for this business could be said to be huge. However, so far, there were only a few wines that were slightly famous in the small circle. There were almost no famous wines that were both produced and famous. According to the customers' positive comments on beer and rum, it would definitely not be a flop after mass production. As long as the production could keep up and the market was expanded, it was very likely that it would become a world-class famous wine. The venue can be negotiated with the city lord's manor. As for the manpower, the night elves still have more than 20,000 free laborers. We can arrange for them to be employed. Meg calculated that this matter could be discussed at length. It seemed inevitable that he would stay up late to draw the design. Crassus and Julian planned to explore the Thunderstorm Mountains at night. Do you want to come along? Meg was still pondering when Irina's voice suddenly sounded from the side. Did something happen over there? Meg opened his eyes and turned to look at Irina, who had appeared out of nowhere. Irina had already told him that there might be an evil god suppressed under the Thunderstorm Mountains. What was worse was that the seal was already damaged, and the evil god's aura was starting to leak out. It was very likely that it would attract the evil god's believers and descendants. The situation is unknown. It is said that a mysterious person appeared near the Thunderstorm Mountains recently. They are worried that someone will discover the seal and destroy it to release the evil god underground. So, they plan to go and take a look personally. Then why do they want to go at night? There is news that there will be an anomaly in the Thunderstorm Mountains at night recently. So, they plan to take a look at what that anomaly is about, Irina explained. Then, I will go together. Meg nodded. The shadow of the Great Old Ones was still looming over him. Once the evil god broke the seal, the consequences would be irreversible. The Norland continent was not ready to welcome the evil god yet. All right. Irina nodded. She glanced in the direction of the magic potion shop, and chuckled. I saw Amy's recent homework. The things that Crassus and Julian didn't reach a consensus on me back then have already started to develop well with Amy. Cultivating both ice and fire at the same time, with both close combat and long-range attacks. Wouldn't this be too bad for Amy? Meg asked Irina. He wasn't sure if it was right for Amy to be apprenticed to both Crassus and Julian at the same time for Amy. It wouldn't be good if we missed such an opportunity. Irina curled her lips slightly, and said, This is our daughter. She has inherited my magic talent and your close combat talent. If she can be taught by both of them at the same time, her future will be immeasurable. Meg smiled when he heard that. Since Irina had said so, he didn't have to worry anymore. Also, I am considering letting her start learning swordsmanship from you when she is 5 years old, Irina said to Meg. Let a magic caster learn swordsmanship. Mag looked at Irina with a hint of surprise on his face. Even though he did teach her some basic swordsmanship from time to time, that was only to strengthen her body. After seeing how talented she was in magic, he had already given up on the idea of grooming her into a new generation of dragon slayers. Magic is just on the surface. Knights are justice. Isn't that what you told me back then? Irina asked Meg. That sounds reasonable. Meg pondered, and said, if Amy wants to learn, I will work hard to groom her into an outstanding knight. You have to teach her. Irina's expression became serious. We don't know what the future will be like, and we don't have the confidence to destroy all the evil gods or seal them again. With one more ability, she will have more ability to survive in this world than others. Meg looked at Irina and was silent for a while. Then, he nodded and said, Okay, I will make her an outstanding dragon-slaying knight. She is my daughter. She can do it. My dream is to be a magic caster with a sword. If it weren't for my lack of talent, hey. Irina pursed her lips, and then said expectantly, say, if you take out your magic caster's staff, and the enemy opposite you is waiting for you to cast a spell, but he sees you approaching quickly and is surprised that you are a close combat magic caster. In the end, you pull out a sword from your magic caster's staff and stab him. Tell me, isn't that awesome? Meg thought about that scene seriously, and frowned. It feels like a useless act of confusion. It was clearly a matter that could be solved with a fireball, But with this set, it became a little complicated. No, it is to make your enemy never guess what you are going to do next. This way, you will always be in an invincible position. Irina shook her head. This is the reason why you have hundreds of chairs in your space. Chapter 1653. Meg listened to Irina's advice and began to seriously think about how to develop Amy into a female knight. This was a very challenging task. Amy was not a blank piece of paper. She was not even 5 years old, but she was already a level 7 magician with both ice and fire elements, and was also a close combat magician. Crassus's close combat magic relied on powerful magic, which could suddenly explode in a very short distance to produce terrifying power. For example, a headshot with a magician's staff, which scored full marks for the aesthetics of violence and had a great deterrent effect. However, in the eyes of a master swordsman like Meg, it was like a farmer's trick. When he raised his staff, his sword could already find countless flaws. With Crassus's strength, he needed to consider whether his opponent would be able to withstand this blow. However, Amy was still growing, and this problem would cause her to be at a disadvantage when she encountered a strong opponent or a high-level opponent. Of course, transforming magic into a close combat attack was a very great invention, and Amy had learned it very well. Meg did not want to completely deny Amy's ability. Instead, he wanted her to learn a more complete knight's attack method based on her current close combat magic ability. She could make use of the powerful burst of close combat magic to make her attacks more threatening. To be specific, he wanted her to be a magician with superb swordsmanship. This should be an unprecedented configuration, and just thinking about it made Meg excited. If there's a chance, I still have to talk to Master Crassus. I must have a deeper understanding of close combat magic to find a more suitable training method for Amy. Meg touched his chin. At noon, Rome came early again. During this time, Rome had started to forget things again. Although it was not to the extent that it affected his daily life, the feeling of his efficiency of thinking decreased still made him feel uncomfortable. The delicious taste of the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers was unforgettable, but what really concerned Rome was its special effect of clearing one's mind. He didn't have much time left, so he needed a clear mind so that he could forge a true divine weapon that surpassed all the previous weapons in this final period of time. He had spent his entire life on the forging table, and his ideal home was also on the forging table. Young Master Cyril, that's Master Rome over there. He's the best blacksmith on the Norland continent. If we can hire him as our master blacksmith, even if it's just in name, we'll definitely become the best blacksmith shop on the Norland continent. We won't have to worry about orders anymore. A man with a protruding mouth and monkey-like cheeks pointed at Rome in a horse-drawn carriage. Then it's him. No matter what price I have to pay, I want him to join our smithy. Cyril narrowed his eyes at Rome and sneered, "This time, I'll make Gloria taste defeat and take back everything she took from me. You should be mentally prepared for a master of this level." The man beside him reminded him. "How much will it cost?" Cyril frowned. Recently, he had failed to compete with Gloria. His status in the family had been declining, and the money he could control was getting more and more limited. "Probably." That man thought seriously for a while, and said with certainty, 1 million copper coins, 1 million copper coins? Cyril frowned. That was his usual monthly allowance, but recently, he had stuffed a lot of money into the blacksmith shop's account to make it look better. If he wanted to take out another 1 million copper coins, he would have to borrow some from his friends. "Young master, this is a real master. The kind that's extremely famous. This investment is definitely worth it," that man encouraged. "All right, then let's go meet this master." Cyril nodded. He lifted the curtain and got out of the horse-drawn carriage. He tidied his clothes, and walked towards Rome in the queue. "Hello, I'm Cyril." Cyril came to Rome's side, and looked at him with his chin slightly raised. Rome glanced at him, and nodded slightly. It seemed that those people who were here to ask for weapons had followed him to Chaos City. "That's your reaction when you hear my name?" Cyril frowned. He didn't expect this old man to be so tactless. "This is young Master Cyril from Family Morton," the man behind him quickly introduced. Millimeter. Rome nodded politely again, and then turned to look in the direction of the restaurant's entrance. Among the people who had asked him to forge weapons over the years, there was no lack of princes and ministers from various clans. He couldn't remember the young masters of certain clans. The people around the queue looked over. Many of them recognized Cyril, and knew that he was the young master of family Morton. Some of them also recognized Rome. Although this legendary blacksmith didn't show his face much, he was obviously more famous than Cyril, who was just a rich second-generation rich kid. Everyone was curious as to why Cyril would look for Master Rome. He wasn't someone who brandished knives and spears, and didn't look like he was going to ask Master Rome to forge weapons for him. Cyril couldn't quite keep his composure. He was one of the most important figures in Chaos City, yet he was being ignored by a dwarven blacksmith in front of so many people. Young master, bear with it for a while. The blacksmith shop's performance is more important. That man quickly tugged at Cyril's sleeve, and reminded him softly. He was afraid that Cyril would be impulsive and mess things up. Cyril thought of his 3-month agreement with Gloria, and took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. He looked at Rome, and said as calmly as possible, "Master Rome, right? I want to talk to you about a business deal." Rome looked up at Cyril in surprise, and shook his head. "I don't do business. This is not a small business deal. As long as it works out, I guarantee you a comfortable life in Chaos City." Cyril stretched out a finger, and smilingly said, "A business deal of 1 million copper coins, 1 million copper coins? And it's copper coins." Rome frowned slightly as he sized up Cyril. "Is this fellow here to pick a fight with me? 1 million copper coins to talk to Master Rome about a business deal? TSK. I don't know if I should say that the ignorant are fearless, or that I should praise him for being stupid. I heard that the last demon ancestor who took a saber from Master Rome paid about 10 million dragon coins and a pile of top-grade forging materials. If this business deal works out, then this young Master Cyril will become a god. Do you think he's the same as the master?" Some of the customers in the line couldn't help but laugh when they heard that. "You're scared of 1 million, right?" Cyril, on the other hand, was rather satisfied with Rome's reaction. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, but he was a little regretful in his heart. He should have mentioned 500,000 to test the waters. Perhaps he could have saved some money. "I'm just an iron fool who knows how to forge." Rome shook his head with a smile. "I can't afford to talk about 1 million copper coins. No pop-up window." Chapter 1654. Cyril looked at Rome with a frown. Is he really an idiot? He doesn't even want 1 million. "Master Rome, young Master Cyril would like to invite you to join his blacksmith shop. As long as you are willing, you will be paid 1 million copper coins. All you have to do is sit in the blacksmith shop every day." "What an easy job," the middle-aged man said to Rome with a smile. He didn't make it into the city before sunset last night. He happened to see people from the city lord's castle coming out of the city to welcome Rome into the city. He heard some rumors about Master Rome from a few peddlers, so he went to look for Cyril early in the morning. After asking around, he finally found him outside Mammoth at noon. He only knew that Rome should be a very good blacksmith, but he didn't know how good he was. However, 1 million copper coins was not a small sum, not to mention a lot for a blacksmith. "Master Rome has rejected your invitation. Please don't disturb him," Joss said with a serious expression as he stepped forward. Joey also looked at Cyril and his follower as if he were looking at a fool. 1 million copper coins? Which person who came to ask a master to forge a weapon only had 1 million copper coins in his pocket? He would be too embarrassed to ask, let alone hire a master to work in the blacksmith shop. Back then, the Emperor of the Roth Empire wanted to hire a master, but he still couldn't hire a Master Rome even after offering a noble title and a huge sum of money. Those who knew about Rome's identity looked at Cyril with similar expressions. "I'm afraid he's an idiot, right? Family Morton chose such a person as their heir." Harrison whispered with raised eyebrows. "Hihi, you don't know this, do you? President Jeffrey chose the eldest son, Lance, as his heir. This second young master was basically left alone. Later, Lance suddenly gave up business to become a teacher, so the second young master had no choice but to be the heir. In order to become a teacher, Lance almost fell out with President Jeffrey. This second young master can become the future head of the family even without doing anything. No one can shake his position, so he went from bad to worse and is still the same as before. This level of behavior is already considered normal. Gyurge chuckled. However, he is not so proud now. I heard that the president has started to consider his eldest granddaughter as the heir. Could it be that the Morton family is also going to have a Hill Buffett? Harrison exclaimed. That's hard to say. If I were President Gyurge, even a pig would be better than this young master. At least a pig is not that stupid, Gyurge said with a chuckle. Cyril saw that Rome was ignoring him. How dare a dwarf talk to him in such an arrogant tone? His face darkened, and he shouted, "Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like that?" Joss glowered at Cyril with a cold expression. Even though he was only as tall as Cyril's waist, as a dwarven blacksmith who had grown up in a blacksmith's shop, he wasn't fearful of such a frail human. In fact, he felt like he could even take on 10 of them. Of course, most importantly, he would not allow anyone to humiliate Master Rome. Joey had the same expression. He even gripped the heavy hammer on his back. It seems that Gloria has a good chance of winning. In front of the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling window, Meg looked at the scene outside with a smile. He was not worried at all that Master Rome would be humiliated by Cyril. After all, Dicus was still there. If Master Rome was angered by Cyril and left, Castellan Michael would probably tear him apart. The guests who knew Rome's status looked at Cyril with pity. If this matter spread to the ears of those who were queuing up to ask Master Rome to forge weapons for them, Cyril would probably become a rare item used to curry favor with Master Rome. The funniest thing was that this fellow had no idea. The man who brought Cyril here saw Cyril's anger, and knew that this business deal was not going to go through. If he was not careful, he might even offend Cyril. He rolled his eyes, and put on an angry expression. He pointed at Joss' face, and scolded, "You shameless thing. I think you must be tired of living." Ouch, ouch, ouch. Crack. A crisp sound rang out. Joey let go of that man's broken finger, and continued to stand in front of Master Rome. Cyril jumped back. He glanced at that man's dangling finger, and his eyelids twitched. However, this was Chaos City, after all. He regained his confidence, and said in a low voice, "How dare you hit my man? Today, right at this moment," Dicus, who was standing behind, walked over, and said to Cyril, "Cyril, Master Rome is the City Lord's distinguished guest. You'd better show some respect." "So it's you, Master Dicus. I didn't expect you to be here too." Cyril faltered slightly at the sight of Dicus. He was quite familiar with this official from the City Lord's castle. Furthermore, Cyril had specifically warned him that Dicus was a trusted aide of the City Lord, and that he couldn't afford to offend him. However, he quickly came back to his senses, and looked at Dicus with surprise. He then turned to Master Rome, and asked, "You said he's the City Lord's distinguished guest?" Master Rome is the most renowned blacksmith on the Norland continent. No matter where he goes, he'll always be a distinguished guest, Dicus said in a low voice. He looked at Cyril with a resigned expression, and his heart ached for Jeffrey for a second. How did he have such a son? Cyril's eyelids began to twitch when he heard that. He had thought this was just a slightly impressive dwarven blacksmith, but he didn't expect this fellow to have the City Lord's castle's backing. Bowen and his son were still locked up in Bastille prison. Previously, he had tried to take advantage of Bennett's arrest to enter Chaos City's underground world, but he was so shocked that he sent that fair-weather friend of his to the City Lord's castle overnight. That was how he didn't get beaten to death by his father. However, he didn't expect to offend the City Lord's distinguished guest. "I see. I was too presumptuous earlier. Seems like Master Rome has no intention of becoming my blacksmith's senior consultant. Then, I won't impose on you any longer. Goodbye." Cyril bade farewell, and immediately turned to leave. He only realized now that he was the real fool. Dicus looked at Rome apologetically, and said, "I'm sorry, Master Rome. This person, It's all right. It's inevitable to meet some strange people. If you argue with them, you'll be no different from them. Rome shook his head with a smile. Dicus also smiled when he heard that. A master's realm was indeed not something that ordinary people could compare to. You idiot. Do you know that you almost got me killed? After returning to the horse-drawn carriage, Cyril kicked over the man who was covering his hand as he followed Cyril into the horse-drawn carriage. I know my mistake. I know my mistake. That man covered his hand with an aggrieved expression as he sat in a corner. His body was trembling slightly from fear. Chapter 1655. Smack. Idiot. Geoffrey glared at Cyril, who was standing there with his hands covering his face. He was so angry that his beard curled up. Father. I didn't do anything. Cyril said softly. He didn't expect to be called here by his father as soon as he reached home. He had just met his father, and he had already been slapped. Could it be that his father had already heard about what happened today? You didn't do anything. You used 1,000,000 copper coins to get Master Rome to watch over your blacksmith shop for you. How is that not doing anything? Geoffrey was so angry that he laughed. Cyril glanced at Geoffrey and whispered, I didn't succeed, and I didn't do anything to him. Don't you always say that you have to be bold when doing business? I just didn't succeed in this deal. Cyril glanced at Geoffrey and whispered, Shut up, you idiot. Geoffrey slapped Cyril's face again. He was so angry that his hands were shaking. How did I give birth to such an idiot like you? Cyril covered his face with his hands and looked at Geoffrey with fear. He hadn't seen his father lose his composure like this for a long time. Do you know what kind of existence this Master Rome is? Alex Dragonslayer's Tian-Du sword was forged by him. The Roth Empire's King's sword was forged by him. The chief of the August tribe, Auster's saber, was forged by him. 5 of the top 10 weapons on the Norland continent's weapon rankings were forged by him. The other 5 are almost all legendary weapons from various tribes. Do you know how many 10th tier powerhouses have queued up to ask him to forge weapons for them, but he rejected them? If they knew that an idiot like you had angered him, as long as it makes Master Rome happy, they would break down the manor's door tonight, twist your head off, and send it to Master Rome. Geoffrey panted and looked at Cyril with disappointment. Do you think you're talking about a deal? What the hell did you do? You made your own head into a gif. Plop. Cyril's legs went soft, and he knelt in front of Geoffrey. His face was pale and bloodless. He originally thought that he had only caused a small trouble and suffered a little loss, but he did not expect that it would be such a terrible disaster. Father, save me. Father, save me. Cyril knelt in front of Geoffrey and begged in fear. Just the thought of a group of 10th tier powerhouses lining up to take his head was terrifying. You've caused such trouble. Even I can't protect you. Geoffrey pulled back his leg that Cyril was hugging. Then what should I do? Wait at home for them to kill me? No, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. Cyril shook his head and cried. You can only avoid this disaster if you get Master Rome's forgiveness, and you have to do it before daybreak. Geoffrey's expression had gradually calmed down, and he looked coldly at Cyril. If you don't handle this well, it won't just be a disaster for you, but also for our family Morton. If you're lucky enough to survive, I'll expel you from the family. Yes. I'll go and apologize to him, I'll go right now. Cyril crawled up from the ground and scrambled toward the door. If he were to be expelled from the family, then he would really have nothing left. You idiot, do you know where to find Master Rome? Do you know how to ask for his forgiveness? Geoffrey's voice sounded. Cyril stopped in his tracks. He'd met Master Rome at noon at Mama's, but he really didn't know where he was now, and he didn't know how to ask for his forgiveness. He probably had to kneel in front of him, kowtow a few times, and beg for forgiveness with tears streaming down his face. He had breakfast and lunch at Mama's today. If nothing goes wrong, he should be at Mama's again tonight. Secondly, he hates pestering people the most. You'd better find someone he trusts to speak up for you, Geoffrey said calmly. Someone he trusts. Cyril first thought of the two young dwarfs. They obviously wouldn't speak up for him. As for Dicus, given his attitude just now, it was even more impossible. He thought for a while, but couldn't find anyone he could ask for help from. There's news that Master Rome has recently forged a cleaver, and he gave it to the owner of Mummar's. After Master Rome came to Chaos City, he had already dined at Mummar's twice. If you can ask the owner of Mummar's to speak up for you, there might be a chance, George said. The owner of Mummar's? Cyril looked as if he had swallowed a fly. He naturally remembered this person. They'd had conflicts at both of the Chamber of Commerce's ceremonies, and this guy was completely on Gloria's side. Asking him to speak up for him now was like asking a mouse to ask a cat for help. But who was this guy? How could he ask Master Rome to forge a cleaver for a weapon that even 10th-tier powerhouses couldn't get their hands on? A cleaver. I know you don't get along well with him. What to do is up to you, Geoffrey said calmly. I won't let my family die with you because of a fool. Yes. Cyril left with a pale face. Compared to losing his head, being humiliated by that fellow was nothing. As long as this matter could be resolved, he was still the second young master of family Morton. Prepare the carriage. We're going to Mummar's. Harris held his chin as he looked at the Rome, who was eating the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, and mumbled, how puzzling. Old Rome, you actually came to Chaos City too. The Rome spat out a mouthful of the smooth brain matter in the bone, and asked, isn't the fish head delicious? No. Just for this fish head. You moved your workshop all the way to Chaos City? Harris was still in disbelief. If I could eat it in Isen Castle, I wouldn't have moved. The Rome nodded. He glanced at Harris, and said, didn't you say you like to wander, and don't like to stay in one place for too long? Why are you staying here now? Because the fish head is really delicious. Harris sighed. The Rome smiled. 30 to 50 years ago, when Harris was in Isen Castle, he often came to the blacksmith's workshop to look for him. Unlike those fellows who came to ask for weapons, he would bring a big box of food every time he came. After persisting for many years, he couldn't reject him in the end, so he forged a cleaver for him. The two of them had a pretty good relationship, and could be considered one of his few friends. Also, didn't you say you wouldn't forge cleavers for anyone else in this lifetime? Why did you make one for Mr. Mac too? I exchanged it with the fish head. The Rome put down the cleaned fish bones, and sighed. I couldn't reject him. Chapter 1656. Do any of you know the owner of Mammoth? Cyril had gathered a group of friends at the tea house. Seeing that almost everyone had arrived, he asked with a serious expression. The owner of Mammoth? That guy who ruined your plans time and time again. Why, are you finally going to teach him a lesson? A young man in a golden robe laughed. I heard that the owner of this restaurant earns a lot. His dishes are sold at sky-high prices, and the customers line up every day. He earns hundreds of thousands a day. Another person echoed with a hint of envy. Isn't it just a small restaurant? How dare he provoke our young master Cyril? Why don't we go to the restaurant and have a chat? We're not good at anything, but we're good at finding trouble. No matter how good the business is, we can still ruin it. A man with a bit of a ruffian smiled and looked at Cyril with a fawning look. Everyone knew about the conflict between Cyril and Gloria, and the owner of Mammoth seemed to be on Gloria's side. Cyril had mentioned his name a few times. Today, Cyril called everyone over and asked about the owner of Mammoth. Could it be that he was planning to make a move on him? I'm not looking for trouble with him today. I have something I need his help with. Cyril frowned. Ask him for help. Everyone was a little surprised. Cyril actually wanted to ask the owner of a restaurant for help. Moreover, it was a guy who had always been on the opposite side of him. I have something I need his help with. Are any of you familiar with him? Cyril nodded. Ever since I heard that you didn't get along with him, I haven't been to his restaurant. I don't even know what the owner looks like. I haven't been there either. Everyone shook their heads. None of you know him? Cyril frowned. It seemed that he couldn't rely on this group of fairweather friends. Isn't your niece on good terms with him? Someone reminded him. Everyone glared at him. This guy really touched the pot that didn't boil. Cyril had been upset because of Gloria recently, and this guy actually wanted him to look for her. Cyril fell into deep thought. Although it was embarrassing to ask Gloria for help, and he might not be able to get her help, she was the only person he could find at the moment. With his life at stake, dignity wasn't worth mentioning. Go ahead and enjoy your drinks. I have something to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave now. Cyril quickly strode toward the door, leaving everyone staring at one another in bewilderment. Cyril isn't really going to ask Gloria for help, is he? Someone whispered. Mars is. I met an acquaintance on my way back, and he saw it with his own eyes. I'm afraid Cyril has gotten himself into a lot of trouble this time. Mars nodded. He looked at Gloria, and said, but this is actually a good thing for you, young mistress. Even if the matter is settled, Master's side should be more on your side. Gloria shook her head with a worried expression, and said, we're in big trouble, and we shouldn't be so calculative about personal gains and losses. If what you said is true, and Master Rom's followers might vent their anger on the Morton family because of Cyril, then this isn't just Cyril's problem alone. It concerns the safety of hundreds of people in the Morton family. I'm ashamed that young mistress can still think about the family at this time. Mars looked at Gloria with admiration, and then smilingly said, however, family Morton has been in Chaos City for decades. They're not the four major families for nothing. The City Lord's castle and the Grey Temple won't sit back and watch them do anything to family Morton. You don't have to worry too much. Gloria nodded thoughtfully. Her influence on family Morton was not comprehensive enough. She said, but the Marquis family, that's Bowen and his son's doing. They got into trouble with the City Lord's castle and the Grey Temple. Bennett's matter is enough to make the Marquis family suffer. Mars shook his head. However, the father and son don't deserve to die. They will be released sooner or later. It's just that the Marquis family won't be able to return to their former glory. We have to abide by the rules in Chaos City. Gloria nodded. Boss, there's someone outside who claims to be your uncle, the guard said to Gloria respectfully as he strode over. Uncle? Gloria frowned, and doubtfully asked, could it be Cyril? Gloria pondered for a while, and said to the guard, bring him to the guest hall. Yes. The guard acknowledged and left. Could it be because of Master Rome's matter? But I don't know that master, Gloria said doubtfully after the guard left. He's most likely here to ask you for a favor. Listen to what he has to say. No matter what he says, don't agree to it in person. Mars was also a little surprised by Cyril's arrival. All right. Gloria nodded. She really couldn't guess Cyril's motive for looking for her at this time. Cyril followed the guard into the factory. He looked at the row upon row of factories, and felt a little uncomfortable. He had just gone to the factory before Swade, and more than half of the workers there had moved to the new factory. Gloria was also at the new factory, so he came here again. In just a few short months, Gloria had already upgraded to a second factory. She had spent money to buy a large piece of land in the northern part of the city. The factory was quite large, and it was more than 10 times larger than his blacksmith shop. He wasn't sure about the current turnover of Swade, but from the feedback from his subordinates, Swade had already made a name for itself in Chaos City. The high prices didn't stop the women's enthusiasm at all, and they were often out of stock. They were known as the mammoths of the clothing industry. Many of the high-end custom-made orders that originally belonged to famous tailors had now been transferred to Swade. The factory was working day and night, but still couldn't meet the demand. However, Gloria was now taking over the entire textile industry of family Morton, from the cotton farm to the fabric sales channels all over the Norland continent. Years of accumulated problems, lengthy sales chains, and products that were gradually losing competitiveness had turned this industry, which used to be the backbone of family Morton, into a leech that clung to the entire family. Geoffrey had tried to change this industry, but it ended in failure. There were too many people from family Morton in this industry, and the old people who had followed him in his business. The problem was very complicated, and there was almost no way to solve it. Gloria was just a little girl who had just turned 18. What ability did she have to revive this industry that Jeffrey was about to abolish? It's impossible. It doesn't exist. Cyril thought to himself. He tried to calm himself down, and took a deep breath to calm down. He began to think about how to ask for Gloria's help when he met her later. Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1657. Uncle Cyril, what a rare guest. Gloria sat at the head of the table and looked at Cyril with a smile. Please sit here. Cyril's eyelids twitched when he saw that Gloria didn't get up to greet him. He then looked at Mars behind her and a haze flashed across his eyes. However, he quickly put on a smile and nodded. I heard that you recently moved to a new factory. As your uncle, of course I have to come and take a look. Thank you, Uncle. Gloria nodded slightly. She looked at Cyril and didn't say anything else. Cyril was still waiting for Gloria to ask him why he was here. He was just about to tell her that he wanted her to introduce him to Mammy Restaurant's boss and ask him for help, but the atmosphere suddenly froze in an awkward manner. After a moment of silence, Cyril saw that Gloria didn't even intend to serve him tea. However, he couldn't just leave in a huff. He could only smile awkwardly and say, Actually, I came here today to ask for your help. With Uncle Cyril's ability, is there anything else that you need my help with? Gloria asked with a smile. This. Cyril wanted to find a hole to hide in. There was no possibility of reconciliation between him and Gloria when it came to the inheritance. Asking for her help was the same as asking for a slap in his face. If he was in Gloria's shoes, he wouldn't just stand by and watch. It would be good enough if he didn't step in and kick her when she was down. This lass has become shrewd. She's not so easy to fool. Cyril looked at the unmoved Gloria. He rolled his eyes and slid down from the chair. He sat on the ground and said with a sorrowful face, Gloria, you have to help me. My mouth was mean today and offended Master Rome. If I don't get his forgiveness before sunset today, people will line up to kill me. Not only me, but the whole family Morton will be implicated. Oh, it seems that Uncle has done something big today. Gloria nodded slightly. Her expression was as calm as an ancient well. She wasn't surprised by Cyril's words and behavior. In the past decade or so, Cyril and his family had played many tricks on her family. The fact that she hadn't kicked them while they were down was already a sign of consideration for them living under the same roof. But now, Cyril was shamelessly begging her. Mars nodded slightly when he saw this scene. He had seen Miss Gloria's improvement in the past few months with his own eyes. She had grown from an innocent girl to a mature businesswoman who didn't like to show her face. Her speed was so fast that it surprised him. This fellow is really heartless. Cyril's eyes darkened. He continued to play the victim. Gloria, you might not know who that Master Rome is. Master Rome is the most famous legendary blacksmith on the Norland continent. Alex's Tian-Du sword was made by him. Other than that, he has also forged countless divine weapons. He is known as the #1 blacksmith in Isen Castle. There are dozens of powerhouses lining up to ask for a weapon made by him. Gloria interrupted Cyril's words. She looked at him with surprise, and said, I'm very surprised that you don't know who he is, Uncle, and even dared to offend him. Cyril didn't know what to say. This guy knew everything, yet he acted as if it didn't matter to him. It was clear that he wanted to see him make a fool of himself, and the mockery in his voice made him feel as if his cheeks were being stung. However, it was almost evening now, and he couldn't find a second person who could plead for him. He could only pin all his hopes on Gloria. It has already happened. It's useless no matter how I explain now. I only hope that you can help me plead with the boss of Mammoth. Ask him to help me apologize to Master Rome and ask for his forgiveness. Cyril looked at Gloria with a sincere expression. I know I've done many things to you in the past, but I really have no choice this time. You don't want to see your uncle get beaten to death, right? Mr. Meg. A hint of surprise appeared in Gloria's eyes. How did this have anything to do with Mr. Meg again? Mars was also puzzled. The most important thing for Cyril to do now was to get Master Rome's forgiveness before nightfall. But what did this have to do with Mr. Meg? Yes. I'm afraid only Mr. Meg can help with this matter. Cyril quickly nodded and said, Master Rome has just arrived in Chaos City. I heard that Mr. Meg is very close to Master Rome. There's no one more suitable than him. As long as he's willing to plead for me, this matter will definitely be over. So Mr. Meg and Master Rome are old friends. Gloria was a little surprised, but she didn't show much surprise on her face. After pondering for a moment, she said, Then you should go to Mr. Meg for this matter. Why did you come to me? You know that I have some conflicts with him in the past. If I go to him directly, I'm afraid I won't even be able to talk to him, let alone ask him for help. Cyril looked at Gloria with an awkward expression, and said, I know you're very close to him. I hope you can ask him to put in a good word for me in front of Master Rome on account of me being your uncle, and this matter will be over. Mr. Meg and I only have business dealings. Your request will put me in a difficult position. Gloria smiled mockingly as she looked at Cyril, and said, Besides, don't you think it's too fake to talk about uncle and niece at a time like this? I've never seen you treat my family so well before just because I'm your niece. This. Cyril's face turned green, and then red. When his father chose his brother as his successor, he didn't let him touch any of the family business. He could only wander around with his friends, and he didn't care about his reputation. Anyway, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't compete with his brother who was better than him in every aspect. His father had already chosen his brother as the successor, and he never looked him in the eye. He hated his brother who easily got his father's approval, so after he got the chance to inherit the family business, he began to ask for what he had been missing for many years. Cyril stood up with the help of a chair, and looked at Gloria, and said, Tell me, what do you want me to do for you to ask Meg for me? I've already said it very clearly. My relationship with Mr. Meg isn't as close as you think. Gloria still calmly refused. I don't want to know the relationship between you two. You're a businessman now, so let's talk about business. What do you want from me, and I'll get help from you? Cyril frowned. You might have forgotten, but I can get what I want without doing anything. Gloria smiled. Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1658. Cyril's expression froze completely. His eyes widened as he stared at Gloria. This timid and self-abased young girl who didn't even dare to show her face had unknowingly become so heartless and terrifying. Just as she said, all she had to do now was to do nothing and watch him get beaten to death by those who wanted to curry favor with Master Rome. Then, she would become the only successor of family Morton and obtain everything she wanted. Gloria, do you think I'm dead for sure this time? You have to know that I'm the second young master of family Morton, and this is Chaos City. No matter how strong those people are, they wouldn't dare to kill me. Cyril clenched his fists and looked at Gloria. I believe that. Grandfather might use family Morton's influence to protect you on account that you're his biological son, but do you think you'll still be on the list of successors if he does that? Gloria smiled at Cyril. You're the second young master of family Morton now, so such a stupid thing will only be on your head. But if you become the head of family Morton and commit such a stupid thing again, it will be a disaster for family Morton. Cyril's face turned pale instantly, and his clenched fists loosened weakly. In the past, his father didn't have a choice. Even if he made a mistake, he wouldn't punish him too much. But it was different now. Now, people were comparing Gloria and Hill Buffett. As the eldest granddaughters of the four big families, there were too many things about them that made people think of them. This girl who had just stepped into the business world for a few months had already made a name for herself with Suede. Hill Buffett had proven that Ian Buffett's judgment was right. Women were not inferior to men. They could even do better. His father was a stubborn man, but since he promised to give Gloria a chance, and even gave her the textile industry, he had a second choice. Cyril was completely flustered. He took 2 steps forward and said in a trembling voice, Gloria, please help me. I was wrong. I promise I won't target you again, Uncle Cyril, before the sun sets, I suggest you leave this place quickly and think of a way. Gloria interrupted Cyril mercilessly. She then turned to the door and said, "See our guest out." 2 strong orc security guards came in and carried Cyril away on a stretcher. Gloria looked at the door, but there was no joy on her face. Mars stood quietly at the side and didn't say anything either. The silence lasted for a long time before Gloria said softly, "Am I being too heartless by doing this? My lady, you are a kind person. All the things Cyril has done to your family over the years, you didn't kick him today because you are his family." Mars shook his head. "Grandfather, everyone has to be responsible for their own actions. Master is a reasonable person." Gloria thought for a moment and smiled again. She stood up and walked towards the door. "I'm going to check on the training of the new employees. The new batch of elves are smart and skillful. Even if they haven't been trained as tailors, they learn very quickly. In just a few days, their skills are already on par with the old tailors. Their speed is also much faster than normal tailors." Mars quickly caught up with her and answered with a smile. "Elves are indeed the beloved children of nature. They have a unique advantage and talent when it comes to craftsmanship. We really have to thank the night elves for getting such excellent employees." Gloria was pleasantly surprised. She walked a few steps and stopped. She looked at Mars and said, "Has the new salary system been finalized? Capable people will get more. We have to make sure that the excellent employees get paid what they deserve." "It's basically finalized. According to your instructions, the clothes will be produced in the new factory according to the assembly line method. Different workshops will be responsible for different processes. Every employee will be responsible for a part of the clothes. The salary will be calculated according to the piece. The more work, the more pay." Mars nodded and said, "After dismissing most of the old tailors, our labor cost has decreased a lot. Also, from the past few days of testing, the efficiency has increased significantly. It's enough to meet the current orders from Suede. Your method of reform is truly wonderful. It has solved the biggest problem of expansion and development." "That's good." Gloria nodded slightly and continued to walk forward. She thought to herself, "Mr. Meg's method is really amazing. How are the cloth sales channels and the farms?" Gloria asked again after walking for a while. "According to your instructions, the cloth sales channels in various places have been disbanded on a large scale. Only the core sales team in each city has been retained. The cloth shops in various places are also clearing their inventory. After deducting the redundancy benefits, we have received a considerable amount of cash. As for the farms, we have closed a group of farms that were in a mess and had been losing money for a long time. We sold a few farms that were profitable and only kept a group of farms that mainly grew cotton. The first funds to expand the cotton planting scale have been distributed to the farms. During this time, many farm owners who had their farms closed or sold wanted to come to you, but they were all stopped. Many of them were from Family Morton." Mars looked at Gloria and asked in confusion, "But, miss, if you want to disband the cloth shops, why do you keep the core sales team in each city? Why do you want to expand the cotton planting scale?" Family Morton's textile industry has been plagued with corruption for many years. In order to expand the market, they opened shops everywhere without caring about the cost. Many shops were less than 100 meters apart. The number of frontline sales staff was huge, and the corruption was serious. The monthly expenses were huge. All these years, Family Morton's other businesses had been providing for them to barely maintain their dignity. Gloria calmly said, "Grandfather has already decided to shut down the entire textile industry, but he only gave me 3 months' time. I want to keep these industries. If I don't have the determination to cut my losses, I will only let them linger on for 3 months." Back then, Master started out in the textile industry, and was once known as the King of Textiles. The reason for Family Morton's textile industry mess is very complicated. There are internal and external reasons. The wrong decision to open the shops back then was one of them. The loss of control of the frontline shops was also one of them. But more importantly, the Roth Empire's textile industry has been developing rapidly in the past 10 years. With the cheap labor and the huge textile industry system, they have occupied a huge market share on the Norland continent. Family Morton couldn't even keep their market share in Chaos City. Mars sighed and said, Master has personally led a few reforms in the past few years, but they all ended in failure. It is extremely difficult to turn the losses into profits in just 3 months. Chapter 1659. Get out of the way, let me in. Do you know who I am? How dare you stop me? I'm going to make you all scram. Cyril shouted hysterically as he looked at the tightly shut door and the 2 orc guards who had just carried him out. I'm a guard, I'm depressed all day long, my salary is only enough for breakfast, love has nothing to do with me, I'm just a silly guard, I don't know who you are. One of the orcs who looked honest shook his head. The other guard took out a bag of bear biscuits from somewhere and started eating while muttering, I'm a guard, I like to eat bear biscuits. Cyril clenched his fists and looked at the 2 guards who didn't care about him at all. He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his ears, but there was nothing he could do. This was Gloria's factory, and these people were Gloria's people, he really couldn't do anything to them. Gloria, I've seen through you. As long as I can get through this, when I become the head of Family Morton, I'll definitely make your family suffer. Cyril got into the carriage angrily. Master, where are we going now? The coachman asked carefully. Cyril sat in the carriage and scratched his head for a long time before saying in a deep voice, to Mammis, if it's the normal way to rebuild Family Morton's textile system, even grandfather couldn't do it, let alone an inexperienced person like me. Gloria smiled and shook her head. The reason I closed all the production-related businesses, such as spinning and weaving, is to make Family Morton's textile industry into a light asset business. The sales network that has been operating for decades is the most valuable part of the entire industry chain. This is also the reason why I kept the core sales team in each place. But if the production line is shut down, we will have nothing to sell, and the sales network will become useless. Mars asked. Mr. Meg's textile factory has been operating for a while. I went to check it out a few days ago. The annual output is more than all the textile factories in our family combined. The quality of the cloth is also better. Gloria smiled. Are you planning to cooperate with Mr. Meg? Using our sales channels to help him sell cloth? Mars was surprised. He had long known about the cooperation between Gloria and Meg. He had even personally communicated with Mr. Meg several times. He was impressed by Mr. Meg's wisdom and unique business views. He even felt that if Mr. Meg had not been held back by cooking, he might have become a better business genius than Hill Buffett. As the fashion designer, Mr. Meg definitely played a big part in Suede's rapid growth to become the #1 women's clothing brand in Chaos City. But he did not expect Mr. Meg to enter the textile industry so quickly. Furthermore, the new factory had only been operating for a short while, and it had already reached the production capacity of all the textile factories in Family Morton. Yes. Mr. Meg will sell the high-quality cloth to us at a price lower than the market price, and then we will sell it to all parts of the world through our channels. Gloria nodded. What's the approximate price? Mars asked. He was a little worried that Gloria, who had just taken over the textile industry, would step into a trap. It's 30% lower than the cost price of our own factories in the Roth Empire. 30%. Mars raised his voice immediately. He stopped in his tracks and stared at Gloria in disbelief. You mean 30% lower than the cost price, and not the selling price? Yes, 30% lower than the cost price. Mr. Meg also said that if we can provide them with high-quality cotton at a low price, the price will be reduced by another 10%. Gloria nodded with a smile. So you kept all the cotton farms, and gave them money to buy land. You also asked them to plant the best cotton. Mars came to a sudden realization, and he turned to Gloria with an astonished expression as he said, I didn't think that young Mistress Mag would have already reached such an important agreement with you. If we can obtain high-quality cloth and cotton yarn at such a low price, then we'll be able to gain a massive competitive advantage in the global market. Gloria nodded and said, Mr. Meg gave us such preferential treatment, but he also made a request. I will invest in a textile brand with him, and share the brand and profits. That's not too much to ask. Mars nodded. With such a low price, it wouldn't be difficult for Meg to expand the market himself. It would just take some time. He chose to cooperate with Gloria, and showed such sincerity. They would set up a brand together, and they would share the capital, so their cooperation would become closer. After all the stores under our brands are closed, we can start to distribute the goods for the new brand. We won't be opening thousands of stores this time. Instead, we will open large stores and sell the goods at a low price. Not only will we reduce labor costs, but we will also increase sales. Gloria smiled and said, Mr. Meg said that as long as our sales can keep up, he can double the production at any time. Mr. Meg is really a god. Mars was more than amazed. Family Morton couldn't reduce the production costs and increase the production after decades of research, but to Meg, it was as simple as playing house. Mr. Meg and I agreed that the first delivery time will be at the beginning of next month. Before that, we need to gather a sum of money and make sure that our sales team is ready for the new brand. Gloria looked at Mars and said, whether we can turn the textile industry's losses into profits in 3 months depends on this. Mr. Meg, I beg you, please save me. Meg opened the door and saw Cyril bowing and begging with a face full of flattery. He was a little confused. That's not right. This second young master of the Morton family always had his nose in the air and didn't look anyone in the eye. He even insulted me several times during the Chamber of Commerce's annual meeting. What's wrong with him today? Did I get the wrong person? Meg tried to ask. No, I'm Cyril, the Cyril you know. Cyril quickly shook his head and looked at Meg with a sad face, and said, Mr. Meg, I'm here today to ask for your help. Do you think I can help you? Meg rolled his eyes and asked. Cyril, who had been brewing his emotions for a long time, suddenly choked. He stared at Meg. This guy didn't play by the rules. How could he speak like this? How could he not let him speak? Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1660. Meg looked at Cyril calmly. He had already guessed the purpose of his visit. However, he wasn't a fool. How could he intercede for him? It was normal for him to add fuel to the fire. Meg had no feelings for family Morton. He was a little unhappy with the rigid president. He didn't care about Cyril showing off his intelligence. However, if he had the chance, he wouldn't mind lifting his foot and stomping a disgusting cockroach to death. Of course, the most important thing was that if Cyril fell, Gloria would be able to take over. He quite liked this clever girl and had decided to build a deeper friendship with her. Of course, it was in the business aspect. Although she couldn't compare with the Hill in many aspects, Meg was more willing to communicate with the fledgling Gloria than the overly shrewd and business-minded Buffett Hill. Men, no matter what, like to be brought up by themselves. Cyril looked at Meg with hatred. This guy's disgusting methods were even worse than Gloria's. However, he couldn't get angry. He didn't even dare to provoke him at this time. Otherwise, if he said a few more bad things about him in front of Master Rome, he probably wouldn't be able to get through tonight. Mr. Meg, it's my fault. I've made you angry time and time again. I sincerely apologize to you. I hope that you won't hold a grudge against me and put in a good word for me to Master Rome. Cyril begged with a sad face. He rolled his eyes and said, I also hope that you can help me for Gloria's sake. I know that you have a good relationship with her. I'm her uncle. I heard that you haven't married yet. I can help you in this matter. Huh? Meg looked at Cyril with some surprise. What was going on? He couldn't ask for help, so he sold his niece. Wait, who said I haven't married? My daughter is already 4 years old. Did I give birth to her myself? Mag pursed his lips as he looked at Cyril with a mocking smile, and said, also, young Mistress Gloria and I are purely business partners. Our relationship is indeed quite good, so if I were to help you, wouldn't that ruin our relationship? This matter concerns the safety of family Morton. Gloria is also on my side, Cyril quickly said. Are you stupid, or do you think I'm stupid? Meg slammed the door, too lazy to argue with him. He had personally witnessed the influence of Master Rome. When he was in Isen Castle, there was always a line of experts waiting outside the door to request to forge weapons. He was also known as the dwarf that should not be provoked in Isen Castle, because there was always a group of crazy bodyguards looking for a chance to curry favor with him. Cyril, on the other hand, jumped out and became a monster for others to gain favor with. He did not think that Cyril would really be hacked to death. The Castellan's castle would not let such a thing happen for family Morton's sake. However, this matter would not be resolved so easily. If Cyril did not die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. As for whether Geoffrey would continue to let him be a candidate for family Morton's successor, it would depend on whether he was determined to let Gloria become the successor. Interesting. Meg sat back in his seat with a slight smile. The teapot on the small stove was still steaming. He picked up the book on the table, Lord of the Mysteries, which he had read halfway through, and continued reading. Compared to the somewhat obscure Chulhu Mythos books abroad, the reading experience of this book was very good. Damn it. Cyril punched the tree beside the restaurant. His face was ashen, and the veins on his forehead were bulging. After being thwarted by Gloria and Meg, Cyril began to feel anxious as the sun was setting and there were already people waiting outside the restaurant. It was obviously too late to find someone to pull strings now. Cyril clenched his fists as he looked at all of the customers chatting merrily with one another. It looks like I'll have to apologize to that old man in person. There's only one chance, so I have to get his forgiveness in person. Master Rome, the location of the forging workshop has been confirmed. A construction team will build the new forging workshop according to your request in the next 2 days. If you need anything, you can send someone to find me at any time. The Castellan's residence will do its best to help. Dicus looked at Rome and said with a smile, the Castellan will be hosting a banquet tonight. Do you think, thank you for your help, but the banquet won't take up the Castellan's time. I'll just go to Mammis for a simple meal. Thank you for your kindness. Before Dicus could finish, Rome had already declined with a smile. The Castellan knows that you don't like the banquets at the Castellan's residence, so he's hosting a banquet at Mammis tonight to entertain you. It's a private banquet tonight, so he'll only bring his family to the banquet, Dicus said with a smile. Rome nodded with a smile and said, if that's the case, I naturally can't decline. I'd also like to thank Castellan Michael personally for his help with the matter of the forging workshop. Father, is the person we're going to meet today really the Master Rome who forged the Tian-Du sword? Vivian asked excitedly as she looked at Michael. Yes. The location of Master Rome's new forging workshop has been confirmed. It's near the Aiden Square. Michael nodded with a smile. Then, can I ask him to forge a sword for me? Vivian asked expectantly. Haven't you stopped practicing swordsmanship for many years? But I've also wanted to roam the world with a sword. Vivian said meekly. Furthermore, wouldn't it be very cool to walk around with a sword of the same quality as the Tian-Du sword? There are so many swordsmen and machete men in the world who can't even get a sword. Even the 10th tier powerhouses can't get one, and you're asking for one. You're really ignorant and fearless. Michael laughed helplessly. I see. I was just kidding. It's not convenient to go shopping with a sword, so don't take it seriously. Vivian stuck her tongue out when she heard that. Then, she perplexedly asked, but, if Master Rome is so impressive, why did he come to our Chaos City? Yes. You wrote to him back then, but weren't you rejected directly? The madam asked curiously as she sat opposite him. We have to give our Mr. Mac credit for being able to attract a legendary blacksmith like Master Rome to Chaos City, Michael said with a smile. Mr. Mac? Vivian exclaimed. What's wrong with him? According to Master Rome himself, he might have come to Chaos City so that he could eat Mr. Mac's steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. Michael's smile was a little ridiculous. This reason is really very real. Vivian nodded understandingly. If I couldn't eat spicy grilled fish every day, I would also want to move to Chaos City no matter how far it was. This Mr. Mac is really quite capable. The city lord's wife covered her mouth as she chuckled. Vivian's eyes suddenly lit up, and she smilingly said, "Hey, Father, since Mr. Mac could even lure Master Rome to Chaos City, why don't we let him try to lure other talents to Chaos City too? For example, that master tactician from the demons who's good at calculation, that master of combat from the orcs." Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1661. You're such a clever little girl. Michael couldn't help but smile. However, after some serious consideration, he said, "I'm very confident in Mr. Mac's cooking, but the prerequisite is for those people to taste Mr. Mac's dishes first. That's not an easy thing to do. That's simple. Father, you can hold a skills competition in Chaos City, and ask the Aiden Chamber of Commerce for a generous sponsorship as a reward. Then, you can attract the top talents from all walks of life to Chaos City to participate in the competition, and send the best of them to Mammoth for dinner. Most of them will definitely be reluctant to leave," Vivian suggested. That's a good idea. A skills competition on the entire continent has never been held before. If we hold one, we can invite the top talents from all walks of life to compete. Michael's eyes lit up with interest. Yes. We can also hold a God of Cookery competition and invite all the famous chefs from all over the Norland continent to compete for the title of the God of Cookery. Then, many people will definitely be attracted. Not only will it increase Chaos City's influence, but if some people choose to stay, it will also increase the floating population of Chaos City and strengthen Chaos City, Vivian chimed in. Say, didn't the two of you say that we're not going to talk about work when we're out for dinner as a family? The madam looked at the father and daughter who were getting more and more excited as they talked. Then, she rolled her eyes at Michael and said, "You can talk about work with Vivian even without your subordinates." Michael smiled and said, "I didn't expect Vivian's ideas to be so unique. She gave me a lot of inspiration." "You don't say. I even want her to work in the City Lord's Castle's secretariat. The injection of young blood might be able to give those old fellows some new ideas." "That won't do. I've already prepared for the Chaos School's teacher recruitment exam. I'm going to fight for education with Luna for the rest of my life. I'm not going to get involved in the politics of you adults." Vivian immediately shook her head with a tragic expression. "Don't be so smug. Chaos School won't let you go to Chaos City just because you're the young mistress of the City Lord's castle. You've only been preparing for a short while, and you're already so confident." The madam poured a bucket of cold water on Vivian. "Mother." Vivian pouted, feeling a little wronged. "How can that be? Our Vivian is very outstanding. Although she is a little eccentric, she has read more books than most of the teachers in Chaos School. She is very knowledgeable and has the heart to educate others. I believe she will have no problem passing the teacher recruitment test," Michael said to Vivian with a doting smile. "Hihi, father knows me best." A smug smile immediately appeared on Vivian's face as she winked at her mother. "You just spoil her." Madam smiled grumpily. "I only have one daughter. If I don't spoil her, who will?" Michael said matter-of-factly. It didn't take long for the carriage to stop, and the coachman's voice came from outside. "My lord, Mammoth here. Let's get out of the car, madam. I'll take you to try Mr. Mac's cooking today." Michael smiled and got out of the car. "Mother, the spicy grilled fish really is super delicious. You'll see if I was just bragging today," Vivian said in a boastful manner. "All right, let's get out of the car." The madam held onto Vivian's hand with a smile and said, "Let's not talk about whether it's delicious or not, but I still have to thank Mr. Mag in person for curing your illness for so many years. He's your savior, so we can't forget his kindness." The horse-drawn carriage from the City Lord's castle stopped here, and there were many people watching from the back of the long line. "Master Rome, I know I was wrong. I was blind and short-sighted. Please forgive me for offending you this afternoon." Cyril stood beside Master Rome with his head almost touching the ground. His voice was trembling, and his face was flushed. All of the customers in the line looked over, and some passers-by also stopped to watch. Many of the customers recognized Cyril as the arrogant Cyril who wanted to recruit Master Rome this afternoon. Who would have thought that he would be begging for Master Rome's forgiveness now? Cyril wanted nothing more than to find a hole to hide in. He was quite famous in the business world of Chaos City, and was once regarded as the successor of Family Morton, as well as the next leader of the family. Now, he was apologizing to a dwarf and begging for his forgiveness. "Are we not going to talk about the deal?" Master Rome looked at Cyril with a smile. "I wouldn't dare. I have eyes but I can't see. Please forgive me this time, Grandmaster." Cyril's face was burning as he stole a glance at Master Rome. If he couldn't get Master Rome's forgiveness today, it would be a sleepless night for him. Forgive? Rome looked at Cyril. He actually didn't take his actions in the afternoon to heart. It was a novel experience. After all, he hadn't met such a person in Isen Castle. However, he could roughly guess the reason why Cyril came back and apologized to him. Although it wasn't his intention, those customers who couldn't get a weapon would always try to please him. As a result, no one dared to pass by his forge in Isen Castle for a long time. They were afraid that they would be accused of being disrespectful to a master and thrown in front of Master Rome. He wasn't sure how many customers had followed him to Chaos City, but he was sure that this tradition would continue. Rome didn't want to cause trouble for the City Lord's castle when he first came to Chaos City. He was prepared to accept Cyril's apology and let this matter go. "Hey, aren't you the grandpa who sells cleavers in Isen Castle? Why did you come to Chaos City?" Right at this moment, a soft and cute voice sounded from the side. Rome turned around when he heard that, and his gaze landed on the little girl who came through the crowd. She was wearing a white fluffy down jacket, and her two ponytails were swaying up and down as she jumped. Her exquisite and cute face was filled with surprise and joy. It was Meg's adorable daughter. SSSS, everyone gasped when they heard that. Little Boss actually called Master Rome a grandpa who sells cleavers. This was a huge offense. Master Rome was known as the #1 blacksmith on the Norland continent. Calling him a cleaver was an insult. "Great. You're giving me a way out. Meg, I think it's your turn to cry now." Cyril's eyes lit up when he heard that. He looked at Amy, who was bouncing over, and stood up immediately. He said in a deep voice, "How dare you? Little girl." "Oh, it's little Amy. You've grown taller again." Before Cyril could say anything, Rome was already looking at Amy with a doting smile, and said, "Cleavers aren't easy to sell, so I came to Chaos City to sell them." "It's all right. I'll get father to buy a few more," Amy consoled Rome as she looked at him. "There might not be steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, but there will be bread." Everyone stared at this scene with their eyes wide open. Why isn't he following the rules? Cyril also looked at the smiling Master Rome in disbelief as he felt a lump in his throat. Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1662. So Little Boss and Master Rome know each other. The onlookers looked at this scene and suddenly realized something. Then, they looked at Cyril with pity. Everyone had a different fate. Master Rome dotes on Little Boss so much. That's right. A legendary blacksmith who claims to sell kitchen knives. Only the Little Boss can do that. Cuteness is justice. People whispered among themselves as they looked at Remi with smiles in their eyes. Cyril stood aside awkwardly. He even forgot to close his mouth. He was so flustered that he didn't even know where to put his hands. He thought that this little brat would offend Master Rome and give him a chance to show off. But he didn't expect that this little brat and Master Rome knew each other. After greeting Rome, Amy turned to look at Cyril and frowned. "Isn't this that annoying uncle? Little Amy, you know him?" Rome, who was ready to forgive Cyril, asked with a smile. "Yes, this uncle is really annoying. He made things difficult for the kind teacher Luna and the beautiful Gloria. Anyway, he's a habitual bad guy." Amy nodded and looked at him with disdain. "Aye." Cyril stared at Amy. He didn't expect to be kicked out at the last minute, and in such a critical way. "Master Rome, please listen to me. It's not like what she said. I'm actually a good person. Cyril hurriedly explained. TSK, he's not a good person. He's a good-for-nothing old man. He's so annoying. Vivian, who had already moved to the periphery, curled her lips and said with disdain. It seems that Jeffrey will have a headache this time. Michael smiled. Rome looked at Cyril and frowned. It seemed that this guy was worse than he thought. It wasn't a coincidence that he was showing off in front of him. If he wasn't afraid of being beaten to death by his followers, he wouldn't have appeared here and apologized so sincerely. Cyril's heart was beating wildly. His legs began to tremble, and he almost couldn't resist the urge to kneel down. Although I don't know you, it seems that you didn't do it on the spur of the moment. As an adult man, you should be responsible for your actions. Rome looked calmly at Cyril, who was about to kneel down. Also, I hate it when people pester me, especially men. You can either walk away quickly, or wait to be kicked out. Cyril's half-bent legs suddenly straightened. His heart sank. He glanced at Joey and Joss, who were about to step forward, and knew that he was done for today. He bowed to Rome with red eyes, turned around, and walked quickly towards the carriage. He had to go home immediately. Home was the only safe place. Everyone looked at Cyril's back view with pity. He was finished now. Master Rom's words were equivalent to closing the coffin for him and hammering a few iron nails into it. Master Rome, long time no see. Michael came forward with Vivian and his wife. My lord. Everyone finally noticed the city lord's family, and bowed to greet them. Rome also nodded to Michael with a smile. My lord, long time no see. There's no need to be so polite. I'm also here for dinner today. Like everyone else, I'm also a customer of Mammoth. Michael waved his hand with a smile. He looked at Rome and said, let's line up at the back for now. We'll talk later at the table. My lord, please go ahead. We'll stand at the back. The customers standing behind Rome all stepped back. You don't have to give way to me. We'll line up according to the rules. Michael waved his hand with a smile. Chaos City is a city with rules, and Mammoth is also a restaurant with rules. We have to follow the rules. Everyone smiled when they heard that. Everyone was willing to follow Mammoth's rules because of the delicious food and the special atmosphere they created together. In this place, the barriers between races and the differences in status seemed to be negligible. It was because of those strict rules that were not difficult to accept, and also because of those delicacies that made people feel blissful. Hello, Big Sister Vivian, Uncle City Lord, and Pretty Auntie. Amy greeted everyone, and then bade farewell to Rome before skipping towards the restaurant's entrance. What a cute little girl. The City Lord's wife, Monica, looked at Amy skipping away with glowing eyes. She's Mr. Mac's daughter, Amy. She's also the little boss of Mammoth. She's also Luna's student. She's the real treasure of Mammoth, Vivian introduced. She's so cute. She's much cuter than you were when you were young, Monica said enviously. Her mother must be so happy to have such a cute little girl. Mother, I'm still a baby. Vivian said with a complex expression. Michael tilted his head and said, who said that? I just think our Vivian was very cute when she was young. Those big eyes, that big nose, those big ears. All right, father, you can shut up too. Vivian rolled her eyes. Am I a pig? Exactly. Didn't you always call yourself a piggy girl when you were young? Monica covered her mouth and chuckled as if she had recalled something funny. I can testify to that. Your mother isn't lying, Michael agreed. All right, I know. Luckily, I wasn't born in winter. Otherwise, I would have suspected that I was picked up from the snow, Vivian said with a resigned expression. Even if you weren't picked up from the snow, you could have been picked up from the garbage, Monica reminded with a smile. Vivian stopped in her tracks and looked at Monica with a serious expression. Mother, I won't bring you here next time. Then I'll have to come with my husband. Monica hooked her arm around Michael's with a smile. Michael shrugged, indicating that there was nothing he could do about it. All right, in that case, I'll force myself to come with you. Vivian looked at the two of them in silence for a while before a smile appeared on her face again. She hooked her arm around Monica's. It's fate. In the restaurant, Meg looked on as Cyril got onto the horse-drawn carriage and left in a disheveled state. He shook his head with a smile. Amy's coincidental intervention had wiped out Cyril's last hope of resolving the problem by himself. He could only go back and face Jeffrey's wrath. Amy entered the restaurant and hung her little bag on Ugly Duckling. She looked up at Meg and said, "Father, I just bumped into that grandpa who sells cleavers outside. He's so pitiful. He came so far to sell cleavers. Why don't we buy a few more cleavers from him?" Bookhouse reading website. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.